getting lost.
All right, good evening, everybody. Sorry for the brief delay. It is a few minutes after 6:06 on Tuesday, April the 11th. This is our Town of Spencer Board of Alderman meeting for the month of April. And with that, we do have a quorum here. We have everyone joining us but our Mayor Pro Tem, who's a little under the weather today, but she will be joining by Zoom, I believe, here in a little bit. So we will begin with the invocation. And Mr. Morgan is going to give the invocation for us.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today in humility and faith. We thank you for all you have given us and the many blessings in our lives. We ask for your guidance and strength in making decisions to help our town move forward. Show us the way and fill us with the courage and wisdom necessary to accomplish these tasks. Help us to remember your love and grace and be faithful in our service to you. Give us patience and understanding to face life's challenges with grace. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Board, you have your agenda before you, and we do have one request by the manager to add an additional budget ordinance 23-09 for the replacement of an HVAC unit at Town Hall in our lobby. Anybody of you have been in there in the last week, you'll notice it on days when it's been a little warm in the afternoon, it's been quite toasty in there. So he'll give an update on that. And so for your consideration, I would suggest that we add that as item 12, right after budget ordinance 23-08, if the board is agreeable to that. And at this time, are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? One that I'll bring up, since Mayor Pro Tem is not with us tonight, she has asked that we move the recognitions for the North Rowan students of the quarter, of the third quarter, move that to next month, and she will do that recognition then. And then I will do the recognition for Coach Steele in lieu of Ms. Seacrest. Any other additions or deletions? All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda with each of those revisions? So moved. Motion by Mr. Muhammad, is there a second? Second by Ms. Sledge, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And our agenda is set for this evening. Okay. So with that, we will move forward with our recognitions. We'll start with the manager, who has a recognition for the Spencer Cares event that was held a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. We certainly want to thank everybody that made it possible for our Spencer Cares event this year to focus on the historic cemetery, the New Hope AME Zion Cemetery on North Salisbury Avenue, close to Charles Street. We had a great event on the 25th of March that involved community volunteers and church members, and also our several town staff members, town elected officials, appointed board members, and even folks who walked by or drove by and decided they wanted to roll up their sleeves and start helping. So that and all while dodging stormy weather. And so it was all in all a great event. I'd say we had upwards of 30 folks out there working that morning, and we hauled off, I think I'm looking at Joel, maybe 3 or 4 dump trucks, 5 dump trucks worth of debris. And that does not count the tree that came down in advance of, so even more. So certainly a productive day, but also just a great day for the community to come together in support of an important place in our community. And so I want to thank everybody that was a part of that, and for the church to reaching out and giving us the opportunity to make that happen.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item is a recognition of Coach Robert Steele. And again, Mayor Pro Tem was going to do that, but I have that proclamation and I will read that. I want to note that this will actually be presented on a plaque to his family at an upcoming event they're going to be having at North Erwin High School to recognize him. And so I will read the proclamation. Whereas Robert Steele was born on June 30th, 1953, and graduated from East Rowan High School, where he was a member of the 1969 Mustangs football team and one of the first black athletes at the school. And whereas upon graduation, Robert Steele attended and graduated from Livingstone College in 1975 and received his master's from North Carolina A&T. And whereas Coach Steele coached football and track during his tenure at Webb High School in Oxford between 1977 and 1986, and whereas he moved on to coach field and track at North Erwin High School, where Coach Steele led the Cavaliers boys track team to indoor track state championship victory against 4As in 1990 and 1991, and whereas the Cavaliers held the 2A outdoor boys track state title from 1994 to 1998, the girls' 2A outdoor state track title from 1999 to 2001, and 4 more 2A boys outdoor track state titles between 2003 and 2007 under Coach Steele. And whereas Coach Steele coached such athletes during his 35-year career as Brian Ellis, 1991 Gatorade Award winner, Greg Yeldale, 1997 NC Gatorade winner, in 1998 Track and Field News National High School Athlete of the Year, Latasha Farr, Gatorade Female Track and Field Athlete of the Year for North Carolina in 2000 and 2001, and Andre Tillman, Gatorade Honoree for 2004. And whereas Coach Steele was recognized by the National Scholastic Sports Foundation as the nation's top high school track coach and was inducted into the Salisbury-Rowan Sports Hall of Fame, the Livingstone College Hall of Fame, and the North Carolina High School Athletic Association Hall of Fame, who also honored him as one of North Carolina's top 100 coaches of all time during their centennial celebration. And whereas Coach Robert Steele passed away on Tuesday, February 17, 2023, at the age of 69, leaving behind a legacy that all should aspire to achieve, and whereas the town of Spencer would like to celebrate the memory and accomplishments of Coach Steele. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, Mayor of the town of Spencer, do hereby recognize the prestigious life and career of Coach Robert Steele and his many contributions to the town of Spencer and its citizens. And so that's a lot to say about a wonderful person who made such a difference in a lot of lives of students within our community who went on to do pretty amazing things. And definitely his legacy will live on, but his presence will certainly be missed. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to recognize Coach Steele and his contributions to the community and to Rowan County and beyond. And again, that will be presented to him, to his family at an upcoming ceremony at the high school. All right. Mr. Franzese, I believe you have a few words to say about a staff recognition.
I do, and then I'll be turning it back over to you, Mayor.
Okay.
But yes, so we have an item about staff recognition that does not have a lot of information with it because we were trying to surprise somebody, and that surprise goes to Tammy Hatley, who has once again served us very well as interim town clerk, and she, of course, had worked with us previously a few years back, and last year was working with us in a capacity of helping us with records retention needs when the time arose where we were going to be looking for a new clerk, and she was able to step right in and help us through that transition. And of course, she's now working with Anna and helping get her trained up and up to speed. And so we wanted to tell Tammy thank you once again for helping us through this time, and we really enjoyed being able to work with her. And so with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, with that, we have another proclamation in recognition of Mrs. Hatley. And I will read that now. Whereas Mrs. Tamara Hatley has served a second tour as interim town clerk for the town of Spencer since October 2022, and provided guidance to the town manager and elected officials with the highest levels of integrity, compassion, and respect. And whereas during her tenure, she once again devoted her time, energy, and talents to the town of Spencer and provided experience and sound judgment on its behalf. And whereas Tamara Hatley has continued to provide valuable expertise and assistance in records retention, bringing decades of professional experience to our town. She also assisted in the hiring and training process of the new town clerk, Anna Canode. And whereas Tamara Hatley has again proven essential in running the town's business smoothly during a critical time. And whereas the town is fortunate to once again benefit from Mrs. Hatley's many years of experience and expertise as a municipal clerk, and whereas the mayor and board of aldermen wish to express their gratitude and appreciation to Mrs. Hatley for sharing her time and talents in service to our community. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire board of aldermen and all of our citizens, do hereby express our sincere appreciation and thanks to Mrs. Tamara Hatley for her distinguished service as interim town clerk to the town of Spencer. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Mrs. Hatley with sincere best wishes for continued success and many happy years ahead. All right, so we are very, very grateful for Mrs. Hatley and the assistance she's given us, and also really, really excited about the training that she has given to our new town clerk, and we're so thrilled to have her on board with us now too. All right, Mr. Miller, you have a recognition for the community garden.
I do. Before I do that, I'd like to put in my 2 cents worth on Coach Steele. I know Coach Steele was very important to my son as a role model, and I do appreciate everything he did for our family. But tonight I'm going to say something about our community garden. I'd like to express my appreciation and recognize all the members of the Spencer Community Appearance Board, especially Amy Ray and Anthony Nero, for sponsoring the tea party in the community garden on Sunday, April the 2nd. Roughly 40 people attended and sampled several different types of teas and finger foods donated by the board. Special thanks also goes to Pinocchio's for supplying all the teacups, saucers, teapots, and other china for the tea. Thanks for also thanks to the Spice and Tea Exchange for sampling, for supplying 4 different types of teas, which everybody seemed to enjoy. And finally, thank you to the Spencer Presbyterian Church and its members for their help in helping sponsor this event. I think Kyle's already said it. Kyle, this has been a great event. I think they're going to do it again next year. And this little tea will raise $1,100, which is really tremendous for that. And I think that's great. And again, the goal of the appearance committee, the community appearance, is to build a gazebo, and they're raising funds for it. And I think they're getting very close to that. I'd like to thank Kyle for his leadership and all the members of the community appearance board for a great job.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other recognitions from the board this evening? Okay. We will now move to public comment, and we do have 2 individuals signed up for public comment, and then I do have 1 written public comment that we've received as well today. So I'll invite Mr. Terry Schultz forward. If you will, state your name and your address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay.
And I think you know the drill, right?
Yep. Mayor, Board of Aldermen. My name's Terry Schultz. I live at 503 Charles Street, and I'm here tonight as president of the Spencer Senior Council. I wanted to let everybody know about our one of our annual events is our annual Spring Fling Luncheon. That's going to be held on Tuesday, May 2nd at noon at Oakdale Baptist Church. All Spencer residents 55 and over are welcome to attend. We just ask that you sign up, and either through your church, local church, or call my bride, Sue Schultz, and her phone number's on this announcer, and I'll leave this here. It's a free event. The town sponsors it, so we hope there's a good turnout. And thanks again for the board members that work on this with us. That's all I've got.
Very good. Thank you. And remind us again, what time is it on May 2nd? All right. Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Schultz. All right. Our next speaker will be Betsy Mowry from the North Carolina Transportation Museum.
Next on the agenda.
I tell you what, we'll do that. We'll hold yours and we'll do it. That way you don't have to be stuck to 3 minutes. All right, very good. And I will ask, have we received any other written correspondence?
No.
Okay. The board did receive one today that I thought was worthy of reading this evening. Let's see if I can get to it. All right. And this is from Mr. Bob Bish, who is a homeowner and resident here in Spencer. And this is in regards to the Rowan County property tax reevaluation. So the text of the email is as follows. Dear Mayor and members of the Board of Aldermen in the town of Spencer, North Carolina, as a resident and concerned citizen in the town of Spencer, I wish to convey my disappointment in the amount of increase of valuation of properties within the town of Spencer as perceived by the Rowan County Tax Assessor's Office. Most residents I know are still trying to financially adjust after 3 years of COVID-related economic disruptions, which involved higher prices in food and supply shortages, higher gas prices, and increasingly higher bank interest rates. The reaction to the medical pandemic and unstable interest rate market fluctuations were major factors in home prices, and that availability triggered uncommon real estate transactions. In my opinion, this is not the time for governing bodies to support such a huge increase in the resultant real estate property taxes on its residents. So if the board is not prepared to reduce its own tax rate, I would implore that my elected representatives, the Board of Aldermen, for the good of the town's property owners and residents, push back on the county assessor's opinion that such an increase is warranted. And again, that's from Mr. Bob Bish. All right. So those are our public comments for this evening, and we will now move to Ms. Mowry and the presentation on the fireworks request for our community fireworks show that the North Carolina Transportation Museum puts on. Good evening.
Well, we are beginning to plan our third annual community fireworks show and event. And I just wanted to give you a quick recap. The paper that's going around, if you weren't in attendance last year, it just kind of gives you an idea of how many people were there, seeing the families all having, coming together and having fun. Last year we opened the museum grounds at 7 p.m. We had a few food vendors. We had the Ride of Pride trucks from Daimler Trucks and Cleveland's plant. We had a DJ and a couple of old yard games for the kids. Well, people started showing up at 5, which was fine, but we weren't prepared for that. And they kept showing up, and they kept showing up. So it got very packed, and we were very happy to see everybody had a fabulous time. This year, we're going to close the museum at 5 as usual, and we'll open the grounds at 5:30. We've added more food vendors because the line was way down the museum. And again, we had no idea. We were not prepared for that kind of a crowd. But we have more food vendors. We've got more games for the kids. We'll have the museum truck giving rides. That's a $1 fee, and that's the only thing that's charged, other than if you purchase food. Everything else will be free again. We estimate, just judging the cars in the parking lot and how we gather attendance, since there's no tickets sold, just kind of allotting for a husband, wife, and 2 kids, well over 2,000 people. So we were thrilled, but again, we're happy to do it. It was a great fireworks show, and like I said, we're going to open it earlier, and we would like to again ask the board and the town of Spencer to help us support for this event in the amount of $3,000 again this year. So if you have any questions.
Wait, will this be on the 4th?
It will. I'm sorry. It will be Saturday, July 1st.
July 1st.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We try to sort of stay away from the 4th because of faith, And we've checked with the cannonballers and they're away. So that's kind of how we determine the date each year, so that we don't have competition and, you know, be a good neighbor.
Well, and in addition to all of the traffic that y'all had at your facility,
It was packed over here
in
too,
town
yes.
So it was a
Yes.
wonderful turnout all around, I think.
It was. The
Charlie had a
families-
good time. He was there.
Yeah.
We had we had so many great comments from people coming up. We actually talked to quite a few people who came from Davie County at Lexington. They're like, we don't have anything, so we're coming across the river. So that was good.
And Mayor, one thing I'll add is, so what I'll plan to do is accommodate this request in the budget recommendation, and then you would consider it along with the budget proposal. And then from a logistics standpoint, that was something actually we talked today about as staff, was the event and what happened here versus across, and we would love to further coordinate and see if we can make sure we're managing crowds appropriately in both, and parking in both locations, and make sure
And
it's more of a seamless
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
Because we kind of wound up with an impromptu gathering here that I don't know that we were expecting.
We weren't either. It was.
Surprising.
It was. I mean, it was welcome.
Yeah.
You know, comment, but yes, I completely understand. We just were not prepared for that. So we're hoping that we'll have that crowd or more this year, and you know, just build this community event. So
We appreciate y'all putting it on each year.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, Miss Mary.
Thank you.
All right. The next item is our consent agenda. We have a few items on the consent agenda. You'll see there our minutes and then one budget ordinance amendment from last month. So is there any reason to pull any of the items from the consent agenda? And if not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
All right. It's a
Presented.
motion by Ms. Sledge.
Second.
Second by Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? All right. All opposed? All right. Consent agenda is approved unanimously. And we will now move to Mr. Blunt to receive a presentation on planning and rezoning to support growth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I was concerned that your meeting might be too short tonight, so I pulled out all stops to
Thank you very much.
help
We
things
appreciate that.
stretch it out a little bit.
Well,
for
we
you.
did have a chance to eat
No,
before
we
we
can
came.
count on you.
You got 2 minutes.
Talk fast.
Put the clock on it.
Be a talk
Put the
fast.
clock on it.
There we go. Your time is up.
They put the clock on.
Starting.
I gave you an extra minute.
Back during your retreat, I talked to you about the need for the population growth in Spencer, and along with that population density growth. And the board rightly suggested that we didn't want to sacrifice the small town charm of Spencer just for the issue of growth. And it got me to thinking about what really is small town charm and what makes Spencer a charming place. I will warn you that the slides in your package have been slightly modified. I started this presentation a month ago, and it's gotten better every day. So,
Hopefully shorter.
so I started asking, is small town charm defined by the buildings and parks that we have in our town? And if it is, we've got a lot of really nice things to show off, and that certainly does add to the charm of this town. Those are pictures of actual nice places within our town. But we've also got some things that aren't so charming. So when we think about the buildings and the parks, and we have to sort of balance that out with the fast food restaurants and the goat gully that we continue to talk about. We've got some nice houses in our town spread throughout various neighborhoods, and we've also got some not so nice houses in our town. We've got some beautiful streetscapes in our town. That's my neighbor across the street's yard on the left. And then we've got some streets and yards that aren't so nice. When you go looking for images of small town charm, when you Google that and search for it, it sometimes seems a little cartoonish, actually, when you see what they present. It's always tree-lined streets and brick-lined walkways, There's invariably a Christmas scene with a church in the background, people walking everywhere, not a car in sight. But really, there are some places, and again, Google searching will bring these up, that have done a pretty good job of improving the quality of their towns. And you don't have to look far. These are all shots of Salisbury and their new park to find some other examples of small town charm that we can certainly try to emulate. Is small town charm defined by history? We've certainly got some history here. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to read that one. When I was doing some research on this, I stumbled across a few things. The highlighted parts of what I want you to take in mind right now. First one reads, instead of creating a traditional company town in which the workers rented houses, Southern sold the lots to workers or businesses for $100 apiece. The deeds did include restrictive covenants, which maintained that a dwelling costing at least $400 and approved by a Southern appointed architect be built within 1 year. What that meant was no speculation. You couldn't go buy a bunch of lots and build them when you got around to it. No cheap houses. They set a minimum of what would be built, and they let an architect determine what was in good taste and what wasn't. In our HBC standards book, I found that from 1897, when the maintenance facility was started, to 1906, 52% of the homes were built during that period, and they were all economical and modest homes. But when the shops really took off and grew in 1907 through 1915, it brought a boom time to this town, and it lists the different types of employers that were there. It went on to say the budget this brought economic benefits to the merchants in town and enabled residents to build more elaborate homes. So during that period of boom times, nicer homes were built. And then in 1916 to 1940, the point I wanted to make was by 1930, the population had grown to a booming 3,128 people, which is exactly what it is today. Mm-hmm. So something happened between those boom times and now, and we obviously know what it is. The shops closed and things struggled for a while. You'll remember back in that history lesson that it said also that initially the Southern petitioned 85 acres into 500 lots. And I just measured out an area across from the museum showing what approximately 85 acres would look like. And that would have been the town. And that would have been the small town charm that we all keep talking about. Narrow streets, gridded streets, laid out in a way that you could walk to the commercial area, you could walk to your job, you could walk to your church, you could walk to your doctor's office and lawyer's office, which we had at that time. These are historic photos of the Transportation Museum now, the maintenance facility then, and I didn't put these in so you could see so much the facility itself, but the things along the edges of the facility. The one at the top, if you look down to the bottom of that picture, you'll see the old park that we keep talking about. This block used to be a park, but part of this park was either a boarding house or a hotel. Somebody will have to help me with the history on that. And that picture actually shows that. You see the commercial buildings along 5th Street, but Salisbury Avenue is basically residential. There's not many commercial buildings out there. Later, the lower right-hand corner picture is a later photograph that shows the growth along Salisbury Avenue. Is this small town charm? It begs the question, is this what small town charm was? I was looking actually for a picture I've seen at some time of when the street was unpaved and the facility was belching smoke and cinders, and it was all raining down on the people of Spencer and the homes. And I was going to ask you if that was small town charm.
Small town charm.
I couldn't find that picture. When we talk about history, we can't forget the North Carolina Finishing Company, as we call it today. That's what it looked like in the middle when it was booming and in operation. That's what it looks like to the right to some degree when they tore it all down and went out of business. But I found another picture that I thought was even more interesting. The plat on the left is from 1916 when the area was laid out for Yadkin Village. And you'll notice that what was then called the Yadkin Finishing Company, the road that went to Lexington passed on the left of that building and went across a toll bridge. And those pilings for that toll bridge are still out there. On the lower right-hand corner is that yellow line is where the old road was, and none of that stuff except the rail line was down to the right. I-85 wasn't there, 29 wasn't there. So just in 1916 to now, things have changed dramatically. Is that small town charm? I looked up just some verbiage to find out what people thought small town charm was, and found various comments. One said, to be charming, a place has to be old, but it must also have aged well. And I want to say y'all have all aged well. I think y'all have done well. Thank you.
Except for him.
Another one said that the charm comes from the relaxed, genuine, unpretentious characteristics of a small town. But that would beg many more questions to define what those terms actually mean. And then lastly, charming implies friendly, quaint, engaging, and delightful. Not sure a town can be some of those things, but certainly the people that live in the town can. I questioned whether size really mattered when you started considering small town charm. What's the small actually mean? And there's hundreds of lists on the internet. This one was from Southern Living magazine, listing the 12 best small towns in North Carolina. The smallest being 220 people, Bath, and the largest in that list being Hendersonville at 14,000 people. So there's a wide range of thought on what an actual small town is. And the last thing I came across, maybe the charm really is just the people that live in the town. No matter how small or how big or what kind of history we have, what kind of homes we have built, what kind of parks we have, maybe it's we have good people in our town that it makes it a charming town. My real answer to this is that all of those questions, if you answer them, the mixture of those things contributes to a small town atmosphere. And then you start questioning what it is you're trying to maintain. And to my way of thinking, quality of life, high quality of life, equals that small town charm. And if we can agree that high quality of life is what makes a town charming, what can we do? What are those things that contribute to the high quality of life? And what can we do to promote those things? I started listing quality of life issues. First one was environmental quality and the physical quality, and it sort of goes to the idea if you had a polluted river running down the middle of your town, it would be an easy answer to say, to make our town more charming and better quality of life, you need to clean up the river. Well, we don't have that. We have pretty good quality of life as far as the physical. The social seems to be pretty good relative to other towns as far as crime levels. Housing availability is one thing we're going to continue to talk about, but we do have a wide variety of housing at this time, a relatively wide range of housing. Infrastructure, not many small towns that have both elementary, middle, and high school, and even when they have them, not many of them have them located as closely together as we do. It's a great attribute. We have great utilities, pretty good roads, and fair internet if you can get it. Employment, that's probably something we lag behind a little bit, but we're seeing things happen now that are improving on that side. The ones that I highlighted are the ones I want us to think just a little bit more about, and that's our community image. And the community image is defined by the visual image, the quality of homes and business structures, and the quality of infrastructure. What do our roads look like? What do our sidewalks look like? What do the street trees look like along the roads? What do simple things like the trash cans sitting out at the curb once a week look like? The operational image. When somebody comes to our town, how easy is it to get around? Can they find parking? When they go out and walking, and you certainly want to be a walkable community, do we have some benches occasionally for old guys like me to sit down and catch your breath? And then amenities. I know Sam doesn't like me to use that word anymore, but today I'm going to use it. Amenities are a great measure of a community's image, and that comes to the recreation, the parks and trails and things of that nature that we have, our restaurants, entertainment venues, etc. You've seen this slide before, maybe several times, but it's the chicken or egg thing, and I'll keep harping on it because you guys serve the people. You serve the public, and the public wants nicer neighborhoods, nice restaurants, better jobs, places to shop, etc. Anytime you have a public hearing, those are the things you'll hear no matter what town you live in, no matter how big the city is or how small it is. To get those things, we must have a higher population density and more disposable income. It's a fact of life. To attract that preferred demographic to come and live in our town, we have to have the right amenities. And that right amenities list you've heard before: bike lanes, greenways, river parks, museums. Those are the amenities. The basics are the jobs, the infrastructure, the roads, the homes, etc. These are the amenities. These are the extras. If you change that chicken or egg story just a little bit, then it's the realization that retail follows population density and disposable income. And that population can't grow in a fixed geographic area, which is what we have. Our current city limits and our ETJ is about as far as we're physically going to ever grow. We can't put more people in that fixed geographic area without doing it to a higher density. And then we start getting towards some of the answers, and the answer is to that original question of can we have small town charm and growth, is that we have to grow smart to keep the small town charm, to keep our town attractive, to keep it a nice place to work, but grow we must do. Oops. So, we've gone that far to ask a simple question again: how to grow population density, and disposable income without losing that small town charm. And I hope that some of you have heard in the past the term and the philosophy and the process of new urbanism and smart growth. Smart growth got a bad rap for a while when it first came up, because as the planners around the world started teaching the concept of smart growth, they forgot that they were basically telling everybody everything you've done up to this point was dumb growth. And they offended a lot of elected officials. And so they have pretty much dropped the smart growth moniker and used just new urbanism. New urbanism is a design philosophy. It promotes primarily a walkable neighborhood-based community. It's something that has been in use since the 1980s as a philosophy, and it works to undo the problems created by urban sprawl that happened after the Second World War when suburban growth had its boom. It supports regional planning in addition to local planning. We have to recognize our place not just as Spencer, but as a part of North Rowan, as a part of Rowan County as a whole, as a part of the Piedmont region, the Charlotte growth region, and now the Greensboro-Randolph County region. We have to look at things from that regional perspective and instead of just how it affects our local population. We have to be concerned about architecture. We have to think about what things look like. Instead of just creating a place for someone to live, we go back to the original philosophy of let's build nice homes, let's build them a nice way, and let's find some way to support that philosophy. I'll detour just a little bit and remind you that HPC does a great job of maintaining the quality of homes in our historic district, but through the years, the legislature has diluted our ability to pay attention to quality of homes outside of the HPC. I will tell you that there are ways to make that happen, but it's going to take some creative thinking on your part and our part to make it happen, and I'll explain that to you later. We need to increase the supply of affordable housing in our community. We need to do what we can to prevent urban sprawl. I came across this slide, and it's from a convention of New Urbanism meeting, and it was really meant to, in one glance, show you that the style of growth below that main road in the middle, where you had gridded streets and homes and businesses built out to the edge of the street, and lots of green along the streets, and a mixture of uses, was good growth, walkable, efficient, and sustainable. And all that stuff above that line was the stuff that you see now, automobile-dependent growth, where you had to get in your car to drive from your home to the drugstore, and then you had to get in your car again to drive to your office, and then you had to get in the car again to drive to work. And if you forgot the gallon of milk, you had to get in the car again and ride all the way back to the grocery store and start all over again. This was another one that came out of that same slideshow showing bad growth on the left, which is basically a lot of cul-de-sacs and roads that don't take you where you really need to go. And that one's showing a path for little Johnny to leave his house and go to school, which is not physically very far apart, but the roads don't connect. And then the slide on the right shows you what a gridded city does. It gives you the quickest, most efficient path from Johnny's house to the school. And because they're narrower roads and shorter distances in blocks, it also slows down the traffic and makes it safe for Johnny to walk to school instead of mom having to drive him to school. When we think about bad development, the one on the left bothers me tremendously. It's what I call cookie cutter development, because back years ago when I used to drink, I don't do that anymore, but if I had come home to that neighborhood, I'd be lost. I wouldn't be able to find my house. I'd be in trouble. And then, of course, the one on the right is one that scares us when we talk about townhomes, because they turn into possibly rental facilities, and if they're not maintained, they certainly become an eyesore and a source of bad things in your community. So that's bad development. So I went back to that slide and looked at it, and I realized that the lower part, that gridded city, looked pretty familiar. And sure enough, when you look at it compared to the downtown of Spencer, we had some good growth. That's good, smart, planned growth that the railroad did back in 1903. And then I started thinking maybe I should find a few examples of bad growth in our community and put some slides up there. And the one on the right is over near Sam's house. I didn't want to be unfair to Sam, so I circled the mayor and my communities. And we live on cul-de-sacs, or I live on a cul-de-sac. Not a gridded city, not houses built out to the curb. Are those bad examples? I started changing my thinking a little bit as I was putting this together. And the one that really bothered me was that one on the upper left. That slide may be familiar to you. That's a slide I put together for a presentation on how to develop the North Carolina Finishing Company property. And looked at it in isolation like that, it looks like a pretty good plan. I'll pat myself on the back and say that's pretty nice. You got a recreational area that wraps around a business park that has retail uses and residential uses and all kinds of good things. But that's 3 miles from our town core. Something's wrong there. If you start focusing purely on the new urbanism ideas, you start to think maybe that's not where we should build. Maybe that's not where we should do our effort. But to really focus on this, you got to see everything. You got to see the big picture of what's going on in our community. And this slide's too busy for me to even go through and try to point out all the things, because you're probably aware of them as well as I am. The industrial growth, the business growth, the residential growth that's happening. The two circled areas were areas at your retreat that I suggested we needed more high density residential. Things are happening. They're happening fast. I've been to 5 different meetings today on different projects for this town. So this becomes the backbone of what starts making it new urbanism. This is that strange number that we pick up every once in a while, the EB 5861, which is the backbone of a sidewalk, trail, and bike lane connection that will tie all of the amenities of the downtown area along 29 Salisbury Avenue out to the Yadkin River Park that we are developing and building at this time. And then you look at it in a little different perspective, the black being the industrial growth we've got going on, the blue being mixed use, the green being Standback Park, now expanded, is very large and impressive. Of course, the Transportation Museum, our 3 schools, and a single large tract that I think will be residential at some point in the not too distant future. And I'll go back to that one. The dotted yellow line is, again, EB 5861, a system of trails, sidewalks, and bike paths that connects all that together and makes it a walkable community that's basically 3 miles long and a couple miles wide. This is some of those other things that are taking place, and if you take the backbone, which is the yellow, and hook it together with a few more trails, you actually start tying together all these other developments, and you can even tie East Spencer and Salisbury into Spencer's developments and make it again a great example of new urbanism. So new urbanism, diverse, walkable, compact, vibrant, mixed communities that contain housing, workplaces, shops, entertainment, schools, parks, and civic facilities. And the last sentence there I thought was an interesting concept. Urban living is rapidly becoming the new hip and modern way to live for people of all ages. Who would have thought Spencer would be the center of modern and hip living in 2023? But I think we're moving in that direction. I'll run through these slides very quickly. The principles of new urbanism focus on walkability and connectivity. That's the sidewalks and paths and trails that we're talking about. Connectivity is making sure when one development gets built that there's a way to connect it to the next development. Mixed use and diversity. Instead of dividing uses, find a way to put jobs near homes and shopping centers near jobs so that people don't have to jump in their car and travel every time they have something they need. There's no reason you should have to drive a car to get a pack of chewing gum. There ought to be a way to walk or ride a bike. Mixed housing, and we'll harp on this more and more. There are numerous reports that have just come out. You've seen the stuff I've sent you on the workforce housing movement that's going on at the state legislature right now. This is an issue whose time has come. And it's basically saying that the market doesn't provide enough housing that is priced low enough for the day-to-day workers to live in. So we have to find ways to incentivize that. And for us, it's a matter of making sure that when we build housing throughout our town, that we keep it at mixed price points. But we don't want to sacrifice architectural quality and urban design. That's what the railroad did when they sold off those first 100 lots. They said, you can build a house, we'll sell this lot to you cheaply. That was the incentive, that was the carrot. But you have to let our architect review your drawings and say this is a nice enough home for our town. So getting the professional opinion involved in the quality, and that's what Kyle and the HPC does every time they have a meeting. They're imposing their philosophy of what's nice over my philosophy of what's nice if I lived in that neighborhood. And if you've seen my house, you know that I need somebody to override my opinion of what's nice. Typical neighborhood design features. I'll let you read the fine print in your package. Increased density. Back in 1980, they were already putting out principles that said you need higher density in your development. And I'm going to get to that final point in a few minutes. Smart transportation from the large picture view. The first one there talks about train systems, and I don't think we need a train system in Spencer, but it does talk about making sure you have alternative routes and ways to get from one place to another. From the big picture view, it's a train system that goes from our urban core of Charlotte out to Salisbury and Spencer, and certainly that's something we want to stay alert to. Sustainability, the last one is quality of life. So I've sort of gone all full circle to get back to this one. And what that one says I thought was important enough to blow up on a single slide. Taken together, these add up to high quality of life, well worth living, and create places that enrich, uplift, and inspire the human spirit. Now, who can say that's a bad idea? You might argue about some of the finer points of how to get there, but to me that seems like a good goal for this town to have for the long-term development of Spencer. And in closing on this, I'll say, can we grow larger and denser without losing our small town charm? And I think the answer is yes, if we integrate the new urbanism concepts into our development ordinance and then follow those new urbanism principles as we grow. And before I close, I handed out what would have been the last slide if I had any more time to add slides to this.
I'm sorry.
But in a discussion with a local developer yesterday, trying to convince him to do a mixed-use development of the parcel that wraps around the solar farm going out Salisbury Avenue, I was suggesting a mixed use that included some industrial, some residential and some commercial. And his answer back to me is the part at the top that says, the retail component of that is what would be difficult. Retail needs a lot of rooftops relatively nearby. Dollar General wants about 4,000 people within 1 mile of their store. So I took GIS and drew those 3 circles on there around that particular project. The 1 mile circle around that project comes down to about Longs Ferry Road. And there's no way there's 4,000 people in that circle. So I reached out to 2 miles to see if maybe we pick up that many. That takes you to about the center of town. And you don't have 4,000 people in that circle. To get 4,000 people, you got to go out 3 miles. And folks, that's to get a Dollar General. That's not to impress a larger, nicer retail establishment to come to our town. This is for a Dollar General, which is on the bottom of the retail circle. So that particular number stuck in my mind, that if there's ever an argument for higher density, if you want better retail in your community, you've got to have higher density, because these stores won't come until you have it. With that, I will end my presentation. No, you're going to have to watch that one for the rest of the day. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Isn't there a House bill in committee right now that's going to wipe out basically the ETJ for good?
There is a suggested bill that I don't think will pass, but yes, there is a bill there that says the ETJ. The concern of that bill is that the ETJ is poorly represented in the zoning and subdivision process. And yet the 160D requires us to have proportional membership on our boards from those areas. It's becoming more and more difficult to fill that requirement, but there is an avenue for them to be represented. We don't tax people in the ETJ, so we don't provide services to them, but we do provide controls for development so that as the town grows, the places you grow into are equal to the places that we have now. There are numerous bills in consideration in this year's session that have a great deal to do with planning and zoning.
Yeah.
And most of them reduce our control over bad growth.
Senate Bill 317, which I think is the workforce housing you referenced. As the kind of the planning and zoning attorney for Davidson County, I mean, I've not had a conversation with our guys about it, but I'm concerned about what it's going to do for places like Rowan County and Davidson, where, you know, water and sewer are available and land is available, and it's going to wholly remove, or it appears to me, wholly or largely remove the ability of local governments to control what's going on. And while I understand the sentiment, as a government worker myself, requiring that 20% of the houses be low income or not middle income is not, that's not going to address the problem. That's my view. How do you feel? I'm just curious how you feel about that.
Well, that particular bill, the State Association of Planners opposes it, not because of what it's trying to accomplish, but because of how poorly it goes about accomplishing. And the things that it builds in as measurements of your requirement to provide low-income housing, every measurement metric has a sunset on it. So you could build a development based on these, and basically what it does is takes away all quality controls. We can't require street trees, we can't require sidewalks, anything that adds cost to a development gets wiped off the books for the whole development, just so that they build 20% of the homes and that they're occupied for the first 12 months by somebody below a certain income level. At the end of 12 months, that requirement goes away. So
It'll be the DR fortification.
It'll just be the cheapest, lowest quality development that can possibly be built, and we don't have any controls to make it any better. So to the Planning Association's credit, they're not just saying they're totally against the bill. They're saying, let's talk about all these problems that are built into the bill. Along with, let's not take away, if you're going to take away all the landscaping to achieve 20% of the housing, why not leave 80% of the landscaping in and then leave the 20% out to help keep the cost down on those 20% of the homes. There are a lot of different other options to this. One of the things I told you early in the presentation had to do with creative ways to manage quality of the homes that are built outside of the historic district. And one of the ways to do it is sort of a copy of the old way of convincing people to do conservation developments. We'll let you build denser if you'll do something for us. And the denser helped the developer build on smaller lots for each home. In that case, it was to protect a lot of undeveloped land around it. In our case, it might be, we'll give you a density allowance higher than normal if you'll do some of these architectural features, extra landscaping, wider streets, et cetera, et cetera. So there are creative ways to convince developers to do some of the good things we want them to do, even though we don't have the legislative authority to make them. So we'll be coming back to y'all with those ideas. I wanted to convince you that I'm not trying to kill small town charm in Spencer, because I live here. And I want it to continue on as a charming small town, but we need to grow, and we need to grow denser. Anything else I can help you with?
One of the things I just want to point out is where a lot of this proposed legislation is coming from in the state legislature is by the fact that there's a large contingent of elected legislators that are developers or involved in the development community. And so they've got a big voice right now. And that's what's driving a lot of this. So it's definitely something we need to keep an eye on. We need to be concerned about. I think my concern is when the state starts trying to take the local control over some of these things, that basically they're telling us how, they're basically letting others shape what our community is going to look like and what our community is going to be. And that causes a lot of concern for me.
So if you get a chance, talk to your state legislators and tell them there are some bills that are up for consideration that are very harmful for our community. I've got another slideshow. We can do another one if you want to. You had enough? Okay.
I think the next one's going to be just as exciting. All right. Mr. Francis, I believe we have a fiscal year 2024 budget recommendation workshop, pre-recommendation.
That's right. And Mr. Softly is going to be a part of this as well.
Okay.
What we'd like to do tonight is spend a little time. It is a pre-recommendation workshop because we're about a month away from a recommendation. Our departments have been working on budget requests and getting those in, and over the next weeks we're going to be meeting with departments and turning the request into a recommended budget for next year. And of course, part of that process for this year is going to be dealing with the revaluation that has happened. And so what we are looking at tonight, I'm going to pass this out in just a moment, but we've put together some scenarios to let you see at a high level what the effect of various tax rates would do given the changes in values. And so I'm going to pass this out now, and we'll go from there. But I'll give a brief overview and let John jump into it. But the idea is what we're showing you here is how the median home in Spencer would be affected based on a few different scenarios. And so that means half of the people in Spencer would pay less and half would pay more. But this is a snapshot showing the median property value. And we show how that median property value has changed from the last value from 4 years ago until the most recent. And then from a tax rate scenario, what that looks like, and then also from a funding perspective, what those would fund, and also the impact. So that I'll ask John to jump in.
I know the mayor, you and the board had a presentation not so long ago from our chairman of our county commissions talking about the increases. Well, since that point, I have been in contact with the county's assessor's office, getting additional information, additional updates. And one of the things that I wanted to try to find out was, as we move forward, this is an unprecedented revaluation. I mean, I've been in this business for 30 plus years, 40 plus actually, and never have I seen a change in values as much as this. I mean, I've seen 15 and 20%, but nothing like this. So this is truly unprecedented. One of the things I did ask was, I wanted to take a look at some different scenarios and try to understand what this may look like for our medium homeowner. And the reason I said medium and not average is that when you look at averages, a very high price house and a very low price, the average is over here, which is not really reflective of what the market is. So I asked the county to get me some information. One was, how many single family homes do we have? Not duplexes or apartments, but single family. The other thing I said is, I wanted them to provide me the median value of a home, for those homes, what it was in 2019, which has been used since that point as an appraisal value, and then based on the new schedules that have been released, what did that number look like? So, and what it was in 2019, the median value per the county was $116,482. This year, after the revaluation, it's $163,560. Now, that's an increase in value of 40%. Now, one of the things that we all have, or many of us have, not only do we have a home, but many families have at least 2 vehicles. Not everyone. Some have more, some have less. But I did take a look at this past 8 months and look at what the average value was of vehicles here in Spencer. Now, when I look at average value, again, I can't do a median because there's no data to be able to get that on a vehicle. So I'm gonna have trailers, like I got one that it's worth $500, but it's on the schedule. And I've got my Infinity, which is a little more pricey, and it's over here. Now the average is over here. So I looked at it, and based on 2 vehicles, the average value for 2 vehicles for that 8-month period, and was $19,416. So assuming this medium average family, they have 2 vehicles, and the house is a medium value house. So that's what I'm working on, as trying to look at trying to figure this out. Now, when we look at tax rates, one of the things that we have to do with the revaluation, and it's in the state statutes, is that we have to come up with what is a tax neutral rate. In other words, had there not been a revaluation, what would that tax rate have been? Now, the one thing that we're allowed to do is to capture whatever natural growth that would have occurred. So you just don't assume that there was no growth happening. And so what I did was I took a look at the last 4 or 5 years. I looked at trends that we have in our vehicle values. I looked at the trends in personal property. I looked at the trends in the real estate values. And quite frankly, one of the things that you're going to see if you have looked at your financial statements yet is that we're already at 100% of our taxes for this year. Now, what that means is that this year we had more growth than we anticipated, which is a great thing. So that is being captured in this growth number. So I also was provided an updated number from the county on what the values were. As they've gone through and started their appeal process and refining the numbers, they did give me a new number that was a few $1 million difference. Not statistically, but it was a little bit different. So Currently, the tax rate here in the town is 65.5 cents. So let's go to the second column here under 24 estimated with no reval. My estimate would have been that would have been close to $272,428,000 as a base. And if you apply the tax rate, that's $1,744,795. So that's, had we not had a revaluation, that's the number that we would have been using as a starting point to whether we needed to look at making any changes in that based on the budgetary requirements and what the council's desires were. Now, so if I take that, look at what the new value is, generate as close as I can to that, because as you get out in the decimals, you can get really into decimal places. So, so I try to just keep it to 4. A tax neutral rate would be 0.4806. Now, that is looking at it purely, here's the value, here's what we would have generated, and this does the exact same amount. The exact same amount. So let's take a look at that, then how it applies with values. So I'm taking a look at this.
John, I want to ask one question to make sure everybody, so that this calculation you're showing with the revenue is based beyond just the real property. That is factoring in the personal as well,
All
and
property.
vehicles.
All taxable property. I mean, all these numbers are all taxable property. And if you the one thing that only got reevaluated was real property. Personal property did not change. Vehicles didn't change. There were some changes occurring to our public companies like Duke Power, Piedmont Natural Gas, but they change every year. Yeah. So using this medium household, I took a look at what they would have been paying based on the 2019 real values this year, based on the current value of the vehicles. So if I take the home and the vehicles for 19, they would have paid $890, and nothing changed. Nothing changed. Now, based on the reval and their value going up 40% to $163,560, if we apply the 0.4806 tax rate, they're paying slightly more on the home, $786,000. However, that tax rate has now gone down on that vehicle base they own. So it's gone down to 93. So their total taxes are $879. So actually they ended up paying $11 less. And the key to that was their vehicles are being taxed at a lower tax rate. So before I move on any further, do you understand how we're looking at it? And if you have any questions, please interrupt. Now, as we move forward, one of the things that we had just a meeting ago was this board approved 2 agreements. One on financing a fire truck and one on a garbage truck with the USDA. Now, that debt service on the fire truck is going to be $49,660. That probably won't kick in this year. I just don't see that is based on the current delivery date. But the debt service on the garbage truck, we'll have that this year based on the current delivery time. So that I have already built that number into the budget request. But this board is going to have to fund that $85,000 moving forward. And that's over and beyond what we've been doing. So if I look at that, what would that $85,000, how much of a tax rate increase do we have to have just to fund that 85? And the total tax rate to do that would be 0.5040. which would be an increase over that tax neutral rate of 2.34 cents. Now, what that means, if you take a look at that household that we had with the cars, rather than them saving $11 based on what they would have been paying this year, now they're going to be paying an extra $32. But that's what it would be taken to cover the debt service on those two new vehicles. So, now, one other thing we have in the budget this year, we have 2 new police officers. They're in our request. And that's one of the things that this board will have to determine is, do we want to fund these 2 new officers or not? Well, if I take a look at the officers, and this is just their salaries and fringes, it doesn't include uniforms or any of the other things, just to pay them and the benefits that go along with that, or $138,357. If and I'm not considering the debt service now, I'm just looking at that as a standalone component. To do that, it would take a tax rate of 51.87 cents, which is an increase of 3.81 cents. So if you added those two new officers, it would take 3.81 cents over the tax neutral rate just to pay for the salaries and fringes. Now, for that, if we fall down and look at the comparison, that would cost the average person or the median person $59 annually. Now, I've got one final scenario on the back page, which is I combine the police officers and the debt service together. And when I combine both of them, it's a tax rate of 54.21 cents, which is an increase of 6.15 cents. And that is a total of $102 annually.
Increase from revenue neutral.
Increase from revenue neutral. But that's the difference between them at the revenue neutral and if both of those was added on. And again, the one thing I will say about this, because I did a lot of research looking at the program that the county has called Comper, looking at values and things. One of the things that it was clearly showing as I looked at homes that had been sold, those that are 150 less, their values didn't increase as much. But when you moved up to homes that sold for 250 and more, their values increased substantially. I mean, percentage-wise, it wasn't even close of how some of those changed. So when we say median, that's the average, not the average. It's the average of high and low. And I felt it was much more reasonable than taking a look at average price, because that skews to the high end.
And that figure also, the median we found, we went back to, if you go back to the first page and you see that for that median price, there was a change in 40% in values. And then you're looking at the property value chart below that, it's 40%. So that shows you that it aligns. When you show that, when we first ran the calculation based on averages, those percentages weren't the same, in other words. The other thing, of course, that all of these scenarios are not taking into account are other revenues, sales taxes, etc. So we're not suggesting that the full revenue picture is captured within this, but based on this big piece of it, this was an illustration we want to provide, just for discussion.
And just for the board's information, if you look at that last scenario of the 54.21 cents per hundred, that amounts to be on what this average median property would be an 11.5% increase over their previous tax bill, which compared to a 40% increase in home values is a little more palatable.
But understand, some could have 25, 30, or 40. Just depends on your property specifics.
I'm well aware.
But, I mean, I don't want people, I want to make sure we all understand that too.
Yeah, it's going to vary based on the property.
Do we have any sense of idea about two things? One, how many people, how much will be affected by people who protest their valuation? And the second thing, do we have any feel for how the county budget's going to look as far as revenue neutral for them?
I have no idea what the county's budget will look like. I've seen nothing on that at this point. I do know that the values which I'm working with have an adjustment built in there for appeals. So there was about 8 million built in for appeals, which was anticipated that values would be dropping. So that was built into this number.
Okay.
Other questions? Well, thank you for the time you put into researching this. This is good information. It'll be incredibly helpful for us.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. All right. We'll move on to item 10, and that is to consider authorizing the town manager to finalize and execute a memorandum of understanding with the Rowan Idea Center Foundation. You want to give us the intro?
I'd be glad to, and
I
of
can
course,
chime in.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is an exciting opportunity for the town to accomplish one of the things that we hope to this year, which was establish seed funding towards the business incubator concept. Over the last year, our town staff and officials have worked with the Rowan Chamber and the Rowan Idea Center Foundation, which is affiliated with the Chamber, as well as the property owners at the First Community Center, which is the former First Baptist Church, to establish a Rowan County Community Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center here in Spencer. And preliminary concepts for that have brought forth some exciting ideas, including co-working space with on-site childcare, as well as in later phases a culinary incubator program. And the model of how this would work is for a 501c3 nonprofit to operate the Innovation Center under a lease agreement with the property owner and under a services agreement with the Flywheel Foundation, which is the entity that has several locations in the region of co-working spaces. And the result would be an affiliate location in the Flywheel network that would offer reciprocal benefits to members here and elsewhere, as well as programming for our local businesses. And the Rowan Idea Center Foundation, as I mentioned, is affiliated with the Rowan Chamber, and they are a nonprofit that would be able to operate this. The foundation has received a proposal from Flywheel for some preliminary phases of services, which includes initial strategy and feasibility studies to continue the due diligence needed on this project. And so we're recommending this because providing the funding for these Part 1 services aligns with our economic development and business support goals. In the current year budget, we have $25,000 that was part of our ARPA supplanted funds that we wanted to put towards this seed money for a business incubator. We also identified that we would put another $25,000 in the second year, in the next fiscal year. And so the recommendation is that with this grant agreement, we would provide that $25,000 to the Rowan Idea Center Foundation so that they could then again proceed with these due diligence processes and continue the planning. Mayor, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point.
Yeah, you did a great job going over that. I'll add a little bit of additional context. We've been talking about this for almost a year, it seems like. And initially, as we were talking about it, we were talking about using our existing available lease space here at Town Hall for that. And as we got to talking, some other partnership opportunities came up within the community, and it just happened that the Old First Baptist Church was purchased. And as we were talking with Flywheel folks, they indicated that really typically their model works best around 20,000 square feet or so of space for co-working space and business entrepreneurship and incubator space. And obviously we didn't have that amount of space available. And then when the Baptist Church opportunity became available, and there was interest in the property owners in pursuing some type of public-private partnership joint venture, and we got the Flywheel folks in to take a look at that space, they fell in love with it because it fits their model perfectly for taking and rehabilitating older structures within the heart of communities. And they've done that in Winston-Salem, they've done that in Concord and other places as well. Greenville, South Carolina is another. And so it really fit the model of what they do well and the types of clientele they serve. And I think that really was what gave the project legs. And so that was when we had involved the Rowan Chamber of Commerce as well, because they have a big interest in building new businesses and business incubation and entrepreneurship. And so they've really latched on to Spencer and the idea that we've had, and the fact that the Idea Center, which is basically, it was a group that was formed by Rowan County and the Chamber and the City of Salisbury back, I don't remember how many years ago. It's probably been pre-COVID. It's been 5 years plus, 5 to 7 years ago. And their goal at the time was to try and set a countywide business incubator up. And they had looked at several locations. They looked at West End Plaza, since the county owns that. Salisbury really pushed, I think, for a downtown Salisbury location. And ultimately, they never could quite come to an agreement on how that might move forward and getting the financials to work and everything like that. Well, since that time, we had expressed an interest, and so the chamber was very excited about that. We had reached out and talked with Flywheel folks because Peter knew of them from his time in Concord, and it just kind of led to further discussion. And ultimately, then when the property became available as an option too for a public-private partnership, that's really what got the wheels moving. And so far, the Flywheel folks, as well as Idea Center and other community partners, have had a design charrette to talk through the use of that space and what might come of it. And so they've already come up with some conceptual layouts and things like that. So it is really moving forward. The next phase would be for them to do a business pro forma to make sure financially that everything makes sense to move forward with it, to do the space programming and everything. Also to work to do a historic assessment of the building, which would allow them to potentially then get the property owner to get historic tax credits and grants that would help them with the upfit of the building. And then the whole premise, though, is that the Idea Center board, because it's already set up as a 501c3 nonprofit, they would be the operating entity of the business incubator. And basically then our funding that we're proposing is to help get this off the ground. We would also be approaching folks with the county. We've already mentioned it to them. They have previously put in money as part of the initial stuff several years ago. but would want to go back to them and let them know kind of what the town of Spencer is putting in hopes that they would be willing to match that amount to really get this moving forward. Ultimately, it'll be a few years before everything is up and running, but this 25,000 plus 25,000 next year, the intent would be to get all the initial design and planning and starting to make sure the funding's identified from outside sources for the upfit of the building to be able to move it forward. So what we have said, I've been telling folks that, you heard Steve present earlier about, needing a certain amount of people in an area to be able to generate retail and that sort of thing. And that's true with retail chains. But what I have told folks is what we are going to be most successful at is growing our own businesses, growing our own retail opportunities, our own food and beverage service opportunities, folks from within the area, in the Rowan County area, that have a passion for entrepreneurship. If we can grow them and give them the skill sets that they need to be successful in running a business, so that when we have a new business, that they're not open for just a year or less, right? That when they come in and they open up shop, that they're successful and they are going to be here for the long term. And you can only do that by making sure that those folks have not just a great idea for a business, but that they got the business plan, they've got the financial background, the marketing background, and the skills that they have to make that successful. And that's what this type of program will provide, is a space for them to work to get their business off the ground and work together, but also receive one of the benefits of the Flywheel partnership is the training and the community skill sets that they bring and the sessions that they bring in, where they mentor and they help these entrepreneurs really give them the business acumen and skill sets that they need to be successful. The other concept too is their retail lab concept, and that's essentially a small retail location where 6 to 8 of the entrepreneurs that want to do retail actually go in together and together operate a storefront through the Flywheel Center. And the thought there is that could be a potential use of one of our retail spaces, our lease spaces here, that would allow those folks, as they're starting their business, to work together to have that retail area. So a lot of cool things with it. The child care piece is a really, really important piece too. That is one of the biggest I guess, roadblocks or barriers for female entrepreneurs is having accessible childcare. And so to be able to partner with a childcare provider in the community that could have a childcare center at that location where those entrepreneurs can work and drop their kids off and be right there is a really, really big plus for a lot of those budding entrepreneurs. And then the culinary piece, that's another piece that is being explored. There are a few models out there. So I think lots of good possibilities. What I would like at some point, once we get through the initial phases, to have Peter Marsh come and give a presentation to our board, along with the Ideas Center board members as well. But I'm excited about it. It's really a neat process to see it unfolding, and I think it's pretty awesome that everybody is rallying around putting this in Spencer, and they're excited about it. So with that, are there questions from the board?
Would the child care be specific to the people working there at the center, or would it be a facility that outside people could use as well?
Yeah, my guess is, I'm not sure the logistics. It would really be up to the child care provider, but it would probably be open outside of that.
I'm thinking about people who work in the area.
Yes.
Would they be able to, even if they weren't participants at the Entrepreneur Center?
And that's a concept that's been discussed, and some of those concepts have been that, it would be a reduced rate for the people that are members, and as compared to outside. But I think it would be open to outside.
Yeah, I can see where this would be super beneficial. I owned a small business for 6 years, I guess, And I had the marketing skills, I had the people skills, I didn't have the good financial skills.
Mhm.
And I eventually decided that the headaches and the everything else that went with running a business just wasn't worth it. And I gave it up. And I said it was like giving birth to a small child, growing that child for 5 or 6 years, and then having to give it away. And so I feel very strongly that something like that can help an entrepreneur is the most important thing that we can do to develop businesses in our community and help people who need that sort of support and that sort of education.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
I take it this is really going to be in their fellowship hall, basically where it's going to be set up. Is that right?
No.
Where's it going to be set up?
So this would be basically the entire church facility. The co-working space would be located in the old sanctuary building.
Okay.
There are, in the back of that building, there are what amount to be 3 floors, I think, that would be able to be private office space. It's already set up for that. And then the sanctuary part would actually be repurposed as basically a big community room area. That would be open commons area.
Right.
That's where they would have co-working space set up on the 2nd floor. And then that area within the sanctuary would be open for not only the co-working area, but then events and things like that they may want to do. The fellowship hall, that's where it's been discussed. That's where the feeding site is right now.
Yeah, that's what my
and that's
question
been
was.
discussed as the potential culinary incubator.
Yeah.
And that would have to be a separate phase.
Yeah.
But with that being a culinary incubator, as far as being able to host meal sites and things, it's the perfect place to do that.
Okay.
And then the educational building, the upper floors of the educational building above the fellowship hall would be where the child care center would be.
Okay. All right. That's fine. My only comment is I'm all for it because I've seen it. That I went with you on a trip to Concord and I saw it, and it was a good program. I'm all for the donations of the $25,000 each year. I hope the county will supply us interest in that thing, and don't get us stuck on this thing for years to come. As far as that goes, I think that's the main thing. And I would like to encourage, if we do have a retail store, it would be using one of our facilities since we're doing all the legwork and doing all that. I think that should be required. Well, not required, but it'd be encouraged.
Yeah. A few clarifying points too that I want to make sure is the Rowan Idea Center board. They have funding remaining too from their initial work that they did.
Yeah.
And so this year, with our $25,000, they're going to put. You remember how much it was?
It was 34,000, I think, is the total
The
budget.
total.
Yeah,
so I think they were going to put 11. Maybe
That
it was
leaves
spread.
9,350.
Yeah. So basically, but I think they have about 17,000 remaining in their coffers from the initial effort that they'll be able to use towards this. So they're coming to the table with money already as well, which is nice. And then the hope would be that the county will partner as well. Our goal is to help them get this stood up and off the ground. And then the model, the whole pro forma that they're developing, the model is that eventually it will be a self-sustaining effort with the memberships and the lease that they're charging to the members and the tenants and everything like that. So
The lease, the way I understand it, the lease also actually pays for the rental of the building. Is that correct? Or, I mean, he's actually paying for the rental of the building.
yeah, so basically the way that it would work is the Rowan Idea Center would be the operator of it all. And so that they would then have a lease agreement with the property owner to lease space within the building. Okay, there would be other agreements as well. The child care provider would have a separate lease and then an agreement with the Idea Center.
Right.
And the same for the culinary incubator would have to have its own operator, basically.
Right.
But yeah, the Idea Center will pays to lease the space. The Idea Center will also pay for programming through Flywheel for the entrepreneur training.
Yeah.
And then they will essentially generate revenue through the memberships that
That's
they
what
charge.
I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right. Well, hearing none, is there a motion to authorize the town manager to finalize and execute the memorandum of understanding for funding of the $25,000 that we've allocated in this year's fiscal year budget for the Rowan Idea Center Foundation?
So this would be for the 25,000 for this year, but
Correct.
not necessarily for the following.
Correct.
Okay, I move that we give the manager authorization to finalize and execute this memorandum of understanding with the Rowan Idea Center Foundation.
All right. There is a motion by Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you all. All right. Next item is to consider adopting budget ordinance 23-08 for the grassroots ARPA grant award from the Rowan Arts Council. And we're going to get an update from Sky Allen.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Aldermen.
Good evening.
So I wanted to both, as was said, we received a grant recently from Rowan Arts Council through the ARPA money of $4,626, and we are planning on using that fairly quickly to. Because there are several restrictions on the grant, we will be administering the first part of a contract with the artist Amiri Ferris for the former Ludwig and Linoleum Carpet Building. It's got a big blank wall that faces Town Hall and has a great view onto the future park area. So we believe we wouldn't be able to use that property for a while because there were some moisture issues in the wall that would eventually destroy whatever art we put on. But we have found a couple of paneling situations that basically will panel the wall with it's sort of an aluminum synthetic material that will go directly against the wall, and unless you're looking at it directly from the side, it actually looks like there's nothing there at all. So we will be able to put an approximately $12,650 mural there, and we'll be orchestrating the first part of the contract for them hopefully this month. We also, wanted to, so there is another building, the Dollar General, down by the exit. The property owner, Mr. Fisher, has opted to pay half of the project cost, so that if we are moving that one up significantly. So half that project cost is now going to be covered by a donation from the property owner. And as soon as we have additional project funding, that is where that will go. And that will be we anticipate it being some nice text that says, "Welcome to Spencer." We're not anticipating that to be a heavily detailed mural because that's not necessarily an area we want people to get out of their cars and walk up to, but we'll tell you exactly where they are, because one of the idea behind that came from a lot of people saying, "Oh, I didn't even know there was a town here," when they drove through. Well, they're going to know exactly where they are now, at least if they're coming from that direction. And the last update I wanted to provide was we received the first round of concept art from the artist Britt Flood. This went through, it's tentatively titled Revival, but we're pretty sure we're going to change that. And this is a mural dedicated to the celebration of the industrious spirit of the town in the various ways that came about. Not only just the railway workers, but secretaries, cleaners, cooks, shopkeepers, all the people that built this town and keep it running today. And the art we're about to show is draft one. We've already given the artist fairly extensive critique, but I wanted to give you a general vision of what you can see in the future. So this is sort of a Diego Rivera inspired work. She has opted to do a sort of archway look. And this next round we've asked for two versions, one that incorporates the archway look and one that is a more continuous piece of work. But it is a bright, colorful, sort of dreamy image, and it's not the best way to see the details, but it's a celebration of work, celebration of industry, and celebration of the industrious spirit of Spencer. Next week we are planning to have our second round of concept art, and if anyone would like to attend, please shoot me an email, and we would love to have more eyes on this project. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts so far?
Well, I just wanted to point out for the board that the arch concept kind of gives the feel of the Wilcox Bridge as well. I had a few folks that mentioned that.
Do we have the finances for this mural?
Yes, we do. This
Okay.
mural is completely funded.
Okay, all right. What is actually on the Ledwick building? What kind of design is going on in the Ledwick building? I mean,
Pardon?
what kind of pictures are going up on the Ledwick building that you were talking
The
about?
Ludwig
Ludwig?
carpet.
Oh,
Carpet.
so we've not yet had our introductory and concept art development
Okay.
meetings with that artist, but his specific style is very bold, splashy, and colorful. It's a very joyful style, and it'll. I was personally thinking it might be sort of a mural dedicated to like the family life of Spencer and
Okay.
the joy of raising a family. But that's one idea. We're going to have plenty in that meeting, and
Okay.
if you'd like to come, you are welcome.
Do we
This
have the
is what-
finances for that?
We have the first part of the financing for that, and that is a limited time grant. It has to be spent by May 31st, so we've opted to pay for the development and materials cost upfront using this money so
Yeah.
that we are able to use it. But the actual painting and work will have to wait for further grant funding.
So this is what goes on the side of this building over here.
Yeah,
So,
some early
yeah,
early work of what could go there.
Right.
Other questions or comments? Sky, thank you very much for your leadership of the project, and it's been neat to see it all coming together.
Thank you very
So
much.
Thank you for your time and effort.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that, is there a motion to adopt Budget Ordinance 23-08 to receive the grant of $4,626?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Morgan. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Howe. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. All right. Next item is to consider adopting Budget Ordinance 23-09. It's the one that you have a handout that we added beginning of the meeting, and this is for the existing HVAC unit for the lobby area that has failed. And Mr. Franzese, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Yes, we have 6 units total for this facility, and they're all working on different parts of the building. And these were existing units, and unfortunately, the one that controls the lobby area has had a evaporator coil and a refrigerant leak and so on, so it's no longer functioning. We received a quote from the mechanical contractor of a repair for that, which basically would replace the evaporator coil, replace the refrigerant and that sort of thing, would be in the neighborhood of about $7,000. We would still have a 20-year-old unit that would potentially have a failure on a compressor, a condenser, controller boards, other components. And so we believe the more appropriate expenditure would be to simply replace the unit with a new package. I believe it's a 7.5 ton gas package is the way it's described. And so that's what we're recommending. We also are factoring in a few extra dollars into that amount to allow us to redo some of the way the system is currently operating. There is a thermostat currently within Susan Moore's office space, just there adjacent to the lobby, that actually controls that unit and then thereby affects the lobby. And so it very quickly gets satisfied in that small space and has lended itself to, really not controlling the lobby very well. And so we want to also get a quote while we're at it and while they're doing this work to see what we can do about either moving the thermostat, adding a sensor, potentially even reconfiguring some of the duct work to try to improve that situation while they're at it. So that's why we've asked for some additional funding. And the revenues that are going alongside with this are from lien payments. that have come in above our budgeted amount. So that's where the funding would come from to do this.
Questions from the board?
Is this the same heating and air conditioning contractor that did the work here?
Yes, we are under a maintenance contract with that contractor.
Yeah.
And so, and actually the repair price reflected a discount for being under a maintenance contract, but the replacement price doesn't factor in such a discount. But we believe we've had several folks take a look at the quote, and we believe it's reasonable.
So it is within range.
Yeah.
That's all.
I have a question. Sometime, I guess it was back, I'm not sure exactly when it was, but we noticed that the candy that is out here was like getting gummy. And the previous clerk said it was because of the air conditioning system. Is that part of this thing, or is that, I mean, have we looked at any of the other units? Do we need to be sure that everything else is functioning the way it should be?
At one point, we had an issue with the unit that there's a thermostat back there that is controlling this room on a different unit. And we did have an issue at one point. I can't remember now what exactly. We've had some issues up there, I think, with either the controller or a power issue or something that it hasn't that one has not seemed to repeat itself. I think we're stable with that particular unit at the moment, but that is the ultimate risk with these 20-year-old units. Right. That unfortunately over the next 5 years or so, we may see this again.
Yeah. Okay.
So we should plan on addressing this. I guess that's the question, which makes some sense. Plan on addressing this moving forward. And I would phases,
say we need to budget every
right.
year or every other year to replace one, because that's probably what we're going to see.
Sure.
Because the thing about it, looking at this and the presentation you just gave in reference to it, say we did do the repair, who's to say something else doesn't go wrong with it? Mm-hmm. And at that time, it may maximize to them. It might go to the cost of replacement of it.
Yes.
So, yeah. I mean, like you stated, might be best.
Well, the concern is, right, $7,500 and you get a 1-year warranty.
Yeah.
Part
that's
versus the proposal for the new unit and the 5-year warranty. It's
like a new unit will have more than 5 years.
And this is unrelated, but where are we on the generator?
That is a great question.
We forgot about it. That's all.
Well, we haven't forgotten, but unfortunately, we're just not getting any better information on a timeline. And we regularly ask about the generator, and there's just, it remains a mystery at this point, unfortunately.
They're Jupiter manufactured.
As long as we don't pay any extra that we've already done.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Be nice to have. That's ridiculous.
All right, other questions from the board?
You talked to David.
All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve budget ordinance 23-09?
Supply issues?
I move to approve budget ordinance, whatever the number was.
23-09. All right, there's a motion by Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. All right. Next item is to consider awarding our commercial facade grants. I'll invite Mr. Harris to come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This one should be a relatively straightforward request. This is a request to award 6 commercial facade grants totaling $7,500 to selected property owners in the eligible area for that program. I will say that we, every year we do this, we send letters to every single property that's in the eligible area. It's a relatively small group of properties downtown and along Salisbury Avenue, but we make sure that the property owners are informed of the application cycle and the deadline, just to make sure we're not missing anyone. This year we actually received only 7 applications. The Community Appearance Commission met at the end of last month to review the applications and to make recommendations. They did recommend denying one of the applications for the cause was they did not complete their project from last year yet, and they also were requesting a parking lot improvement project that did not seem to align well with the goals of the program. So that's why that particular request, the CAC recommended not funding that one. But for the other 6 projects, they range from new signage, new pedestrian furniture, repainting facades, new awnings, and the Community Appearance Commission is also requesting funding to help with the construction of the gazebo. So that is a source of funding that they're requesting. The 2 disclaimers I wanted to make, and they are in my staff report. One is obviously the Community Appearance Commission is overseeing the community garden project. So, the Board of Aldermen is at your discretion whether or not you would like to award some of the facade grant funding to the gazebo project. Additionally, Pinocchio's is also requesting funding. Obviously, Amy Ray is the chair of the CAC, and Anthony Nero is also a member. So, again, that disclaimer was provided in your materials, and it's up to the discretion of the board whether or not to provide those. I did also want to note, and you may find that some of the recipients that we are recommending funding this year also received a grant last year through the Duke Energy program cycle. The guidelines for the program encourage every other year for recipients, but in this case, we simply didn't have the pool of recipients to, the goal of the CAC was to make sure this money was spent. So we found that they were doing requesting funding for other types of projects, and overall the benefit to the appearance of downtown justified making these awards. But we did want to say, for example, that Pinocchio's did receive a grant last year. Beth Nance also received a grant last year. We notified all the eligible properties, and we did say that if you received a grant last year, you would receive lower priority. But we just didn't get the spread of applicants that we would have wished to see. Luckily, we were able to recommend almost fully funding what these applicants were eligible for. Because we didn't receive too many applications, we didn't have to cut back per each award. So in conclusion, the CAC felt that they were fairly and evenly distributing these funds to worthy projects. One last note is you'll find that you'll remember that the board issued already a emergency grant for Pam and Roger, and so that's why we're allocating $7,500 rather than the full $10,000. Taken together, the projects that we are hoping to fund, we're leveraging more than $20,000 worth of investment into downtown properties. So the town's investment is being more than doubled by private investment. And that is the goal of this type of program, to incentivize private investment coupled with the public investment. Do you have any other questions for me relating to the specific awards?
Questions from the board?
Was most of the money that was given last year used, and did everybody participate and receive what they intended to do? I mean,
yes,
we didn't have anything rolled back into it.
Taking the Duke Energy money and the town money that was invested, a majority of that money has been spent. There are currently several projects that are still wrapping up, but I've received assurances from everyone who received a grant that they are still going to be able to spend the money and submit their check request before the end of this fiscal year. Some of the projects are dragging on, but I've been in touch with those people to let them know that if they don't get the project done by the end of the fiscal year, they forfeit their award. So that's sort of an incentive for them to go ahead and hurry up and finish.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Is there a motion from the board to approve these awards?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we award these commercial facade grants as stated by Mr. Harris.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Morgan. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? Those are approved unanimously. Mr. Harris, thank you for your work and leadership of the grant program.
Thank you very much.
We will move on to our departmental reports, and we will start with the planning department report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, you have my written report in your package. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Or I can give
That
you
was
another
short and sweet.
PowerPoint.
That was less than 5 seconds.
Do you typically take a
He's not sitting
Saturday
down
off?
yet.
I'm sorry.
Do you typically not take a Saturday off? It says here that you attended a bunch of meetings and you took the next day off, which would have been a Saturday.
I don't take any days off.
Ah.
I work 7 days a week. At your pleasure.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you see any breaking ground anywhere on Long Ferry Road in the next 6 months?
The Clyde's Corner residential development has been approved to start. The water system has been installed. Their septic system has been approved. I would anticipate seeing groundbreaking for homes in that subdivision in the next couple of months. The Johnson Development Project that we has been approved as far as the site plan approval, engineering drawings, and annexation is taking place. We met with them today to work out some details on the access road and things of that nature. Doubt that you'll see groundbreaking in the next couple of months, but within the next 6 months, probably. In all likelihood, that will be the first one that you see of the major ones do a groundbreaking. The truck stop across the street will probably come after that, and then the Nayar project on the east side of 85 would follow that one. The Fisher Lamb project is still alive. They're trying to round up other financing. Once they have that financing in hand, it may leap back to the front of the pack and get started ahead of all of them. Also met with the North Carolina Finishing Company people today to see where that project stood, and they are still moving ahead with environmental studies, and they're still working with a developer for the east side, the industrial project side. The purpose of that meeting was to talk about doing some cleanup on the north side next to our riverfront park.
Yeah.
And they have committed to do some level of cleanup at the road to help improve the visuals out there. So everything's moving ahead. Economic development, you get spurts and stops, and I know it seems like it's been stretching on a while, but when it happens, it'll change overnight, just like that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Blunt?
Looks like they've done some marking along the highway out there.
Water lines going in.
Water lines?
Yeah. And the sewer line for the Johnson development has been designed. They're waiting for approval on that. It actually will run down Longs Ferry and then down Montclair to the treatment facility at the bottom of the hill. So.
Okay, and so you said sewer approval. Is that the one just past the railroad crossing? Is that where those houses are going in that corner? Or
those are all on septic systems. The houses are on septic systems.
Oh, okay.
And the flags you see out there are for the water system that feeds that.
Okay.
The sewer system starts at the Johnson development and goes east towards the interstate and then turns down Montclair.
Okay.
There is some interest in some parcels in one of the quadrants for retail development. We've met with them several times. They have an option on some property. They don't exactly have a site plan yet, but the businesses come, then retail follows. Once you get enough of those kind of things, somebody will say this would be a great place for a housing subdivision, and then you got more houses in there. So it all is happening.
The Johnson development, do they have a actual industry coming in there, or is that just proposed?
We found out today that it's actually a speculative building, and based on the zoning of that property, which was C85, I believe, they have always been looking towards distribution. But we pointed out in the meeting today that in all likelihood y'all would approve a rezoning to light industrial, since all the surrounding property is light industrial. And that, I think, was a pleasant surprise to them, that they might broaden their idea of what could use that building. And obviously from a tax-based basis, the industrial is better for y'all than distribution is.
Yeah, I think everybody would like to see some type of light industry instead of distribution. I think everybody's doing distribution right now.
Yeah.
Good jobs. Yeah.
And jobs, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Blunt. All right, Mr. Harris.
Just one quick update for me regarding the CDBG project. As y'all know, that project is well and truly underway at this point. A reminder that the application deadline is May 1st. As of today, I've received 4 fully completed applications, so that's a good sign. And I'm working with several other households who are still getting their financial paperwork and application paperwork together. But I do feel fairly confident that we'll have a good pool of applications to choose from. In the eventuality that if we don't get, a very large pool of applications, one thing that the town may want to consider, and this is just something I'm kind of putting out there for your consideration, is say we have some houses that are larger houses in what I would say extremely poor condition. Those may need to be larger than the $67,000 that we currently have budgeted for each house. So the town may be open to exploring selecting fewer than 10 recipients, between 6, 7, or 8, and dedicating more money per household if the need is greater than what we anticipated. But just wanted to let you know that in case that comes up, there is flexibility. We're not necessarily obligated to 10 houses. That is the goal. But again, this grant was awarded in 2020, and prices have changed. So the town does have some flexibility there if the situation arises.
And the deadline again,
May 1st.
May 1st.
And what are we doing as far as outreach for making sure folks know about the opportunity?
So that's another thing. It has been included in past newsletters, and we've done direct outreach to everyone on the wait list, which was about 35 people. We did talk this morning in our staff meeting about potentially doing another round of public outreach to make sure we're covering our bases, and that is something we'll probably do in the near-term future.
Will you be doing that with phone calls or with?
We'll have to just come up with some type of public outreach strategy.
Yeah.
I will say that code enforcement has been helpful, and he has a stack of packets that he's been hand delivering to households that he think are in need, and so that has been helpful on the ground outreach. But we'll try to do all the strategies that we can to make sure we have a good pool. The last thing I'll say is sort of a random thing that just came to me, but think about Steve's new urbanism discussion earlier. As it happens, the Congress for the New Urbanism, which is the premier national and potentially worldwide organization working on new urbanism, is meeting in Charlotte this year. So if y'all are interested, I would encourage y'all to consider looking into how, as local government officials, you might be interested in participating in that. It might be insightful. I've never been to one of those conferences, but they will bring eminent speakers from around the world to provide very important discussions about new urbanism. I think that may be something that y'all might be interested in. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. All right, Mr. Osborne, code enforcement.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Good
members of the board. I don't have anything to add to my report, so pending any questions.
All right, does the board have any questions for Mr. Osborne on code enforcement report?
I was asked by a citizen and actually put something on the website this week. Have a citizen who's picking up trash in the area and wanted to know if we could do anything about asking Family Dollar to do a little better job of policing their property. And so that's come through the portal, I think.
It did. I received that this morning, and I appreciate the input. And I've already made contact with the store, and they're going to make an attempt. Well, they had somebody come out apparently yesterday to do cleanup, and they did a poor job. So they're gonna push that forward.
This is a citizen who walks to get her steps in and picks up trash, and I thanked her for doing that. But I guess we need a lot more people taking advantage of getting their steps in.
Other questions for Mr. Osborne? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chief File, Police Department.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening.
I have provided my standard monthly report. Call volume or activity events on there looks a little worse than the previous month, but it was, and that's actually a good thing. So we have both of our new hires in training right now. So we're logging a little bit of extra stuff, getting them prepared for going out on their own. So Officer Puckett, Officer Paget, both are with their field training officers currently. So that is the main reason that you see the number elevated there. That number will likely continue to be higher and higher as we increase staff, simply because you have more proactive work. So we're happy to see that. Have a few other things, but I'll take any questions about that initially. If there's anything extra.
Any questions from the board on that? Mr. Miller?
Well, it's something else, but go ahead and finish your report. If you
Okay, perfect. Staffing, very good thing to speak about. I kind of mentioned it. We've got 2 infield training right now. We have some additional interest in a couple part-time positions, and we identified a candidate for our last full-time opening. We made that offer, a conditional offer to them this week. So we've begun the background process on that individual. Our target date is towards the 1st of May. If we can get all the steps completed and everything resolved on that. So somewhere in the month of May, provided a positive recommendation on the background, we will hopefully be bringing a lateral candidate on for that. So this individual has about 3 or 3.5 years experience working on patrol at another agency, and then about 2.5 years experience working in a detention facility. So it is somebody that's experienced, so hopefully they will progress through field training a little bit quicker than the standard time frame. So we look to have them up, before the main part of the summer hits us. Probably somewhere in the July time frame would be our target. For actually having that individual in a car working the street by themselves. Kind of add to that, I know me and the mayor spoke about this. I know everybody's aware of the formal plan that's being released by the school system to transition the Knox and Overton students. That is going to increase the population at our local schools. I just received an email at 7:30 that the first meeting for that is at 7:30 in the morning. So I will be up bright and early. I will be at Wallace Forum to speak up there. I definitely invite anybody that's willing and able to go with me and express our concerns. To definitely do that. There will be a few more meetings. So they will have a meeting on the 13th at Knox at 6 p.m., the 17th at Southeast at 6 p.m., and they will be here at North Rim Middle at 6 p.m. on the 18th. So obviously I will express to the board, as far as the police department goes, we're looking at, potentially a 40% increase in the student population, and we have not been consulted about security at the school. So we have an issue with that. There are serious concerns about our ability to provide the same level of service for an increasing student volume at the school. Plus, anybody that's been in this community or in this county for numerous years will know that there has been some issues between North Rand and Salisbury schools, middle, high school, and adults over the years. We're seeing those same issues currently in some of these violent crimes that we're having. Fortunately, the majority of these violent crimes are not occurring in our city. They're occurring in the city of Salisbury. Fortunate for us, unfortunate for our citizens and our friends next door in Salisbury. So we have some serious concerns, and we want to express that to the school board. There again, we would not expect that we had a 40% population increase in our city. Nobody would expect for us to continue managing that with the same number of officers. So that is our desire, is to see an increase in school resource officers at the school to handle that population. Our last target number was 180 students, I believe, is what they were intending on adding into the middle school. And then a lesser amount, I believe less than 50, will be added into the elementary school. So that will be what I will be up there tomorrow morning to speak with the school board about in my 3 minutes that they will give me. So definitely, if anybody is able, I would definitely like to support tomorrow morning. And if not, when they're at North Rand Middle School on the 18th, I'm actually tied up that evening. That's why I'm going to go tomorrow morning. But I will have representatives from our department there on the 18th. And then hopefully I will have a few with me tomorrow morning also.
And I will be there in the morning as well. So I actually spoke at the last school board meeting where they unveiled the plan. and amongst other things was not only this concern for the safety planning and making sure that we have the appropriate number of school resource officers there, but also making sure that as they distribute the students, that if they indeed move forward with the plan that they've unveiled, which I've been recently told that, well, that's not really the plan. That was just initial numbers that they were showing based on capacities, what could be done. So I do think it's important that we speak out. And it's not that we don't want the students. It's if they decide to send those students, we should have been consulted earlier in the process so that our law enforcement officials could provide feedback, so that also making sure that when those students are moved, that the resources that they currently have at Knox are equitably distributed with those students, because just because they send 180 students or so to North Middle, and they send another 190 to Southeast, I think, something like that, making sure that the 180 that come to North Middle, that they would be given the appropriate resources, the number of counselors that they should have based on the population needs, that they have the appropriate teachers that go along with it and everything. And I think the reality, what I've shared with our school board, is that you can't take a teacher and cut them in half and send them with the students. It just doesn't work like that. So somebody's going to get the short end of the stick. The other concern is they've shown this, goes across the entire North Rowan community. 220 potential students potentially going to Hanford Dole Elementary, who doesn't have a principal right now. So I understand the situation they're in, because they feel like they need to get under construction, and I get that. But this is something that has been discussed for years now. And so regardless of whether they were going to combine and do a combined K-8 school, which is what initially was proposed, and then because of cost, they went and said they were just going to do a middle school to replace Knox, inevitably that facility needs to be replaced because of the age and condition of it. But now apparently because of budget issues, they are saying that the latest estimates show they can build a K-8 school. And so, but they're insistent upon building it at the site of those current schools, which means they have to relocate students. But regardless, they've known for years now that they were at least going to have to relocate for a period of time the Knox students. And yet we're just now to the point that they're having any conversation about what that plan might actually be.
One other thing, is there still talk of closing Henderson and moving those students to North Rowan? I know that's what was in the plan, a year ago?
Couple of years.
That's a conversation that comes up every few years. Right now, my understanding is that is not on the table, but it could be tomorrow. That's it. It just, that continues to come up.
Well, I know this is your report, Mike, but I want to say, right up front, I mean, this is par for the course. North Rowan, our area has always been a dumping ground and looked down upon by other elements in the county, especially Salisbury. We've always gotten the short end of the stick. His dad can tell that if he were here. So I'll just leave it at that. I've got a couple of other questions, but I wanted you to finish your.
What I would encourage our board, we obviously want to work with our school system. We recognize we want all of our schools in our county to be better. And we want to continue to advocate for that. But I think we also need to do that in a way that we can be advocates for North Rowan schools, because those are the schools within our local district. And we should have a say in some of the decisions that are made, especially when it comes to public safety and reassignments and things like that. So I would just encourage each of you to be ambassadors for Spencer and ambassadors for our local schools, making sure that we're partnering and working with our other elected bodies in the county, but making sure that we're holding everyone accountable for making good, sound decisions, what's best for everyone, including North Carolina.
Question,
Yes.
who's providing resource officers for those schools now? Is that the city, or is that the
It is.
sheriff's department?
The city of Salisbury provides them currently, so I believe they've been having a little staffing issue. I don't want to speak out of line on that, so I'm not really sure. I know they had some issues not being able to fill those spots, which they've been, as we discussed in the budget meeting. They've been running about 20 or 30% down, so I know they had some issues there. So yes, that's definitely a problem. And the kind of thing that comes back is not so much. We're not really concerned about bad kids or good kids, and we don't really label people that way.
Right.
The fact is, Officer Reed has been in that school for a number of years, and he knows daily what goes on. And I will tell you, he wears his shoes out. He just submitted his second request for another pair of boots today because he's wore them bald in under 12 months. So that's a good thing. But it also tells you that he's busy. He's very active at that school, but I would call him at his 100% capacity with what he's doing now, and he knows the kids. So, to kind of mix into the fact when you throw in, 200 unknown kids that he doesn't know the problems, he doesn't know the family issues that they may bring with them, and then the fact that you're also going to have some counseling issues. We work with the counselors quite often on dealing with student issues, whether it be in the school or at home. So when you kind of mix all that up, we're going to be an issue, I believe. It's not going to be a simple look at the other way and expect the current SRO to take care of business as he always has been.
Right.
One or two things will happen. Either the kids aren't going to receive the services they need, or it's all going to break loose like we've seen happen at other schools. And we don't want that. I mean, you can kind of see what we've had to do on our school security at Knox and North Middle games, and at obviously Salisbury High and North High games. There are some deep-rooted issues between the communities. It's unfortunate, but it is there. We just have to recognize it and be prepared for it. So obviously, when we start mixing those issues together, I don't want anybody to be fooled by a 12-year-old not being able to cause the same type problems that a 20-year-old causes, because we see it all the time. So we just have to be real and honest about it up front. So that's I hope the school board listens. Mr. Mayor mentioned that, and he told them we needed 2 more SROs. I mean, end of story. That's what we need. We needed another one now anyway. In the story, we should have an extra SRO right now to be floating between our schools because of the issues that we've been having. And it's not that we've been having big violent, things going on, but it's more we need to be proactive at these schools and not reactive. So we need to be providing services before it happens. So there's definitely some concerns that we hope to express to them, and we hope they'll have an open mind and listen to us.
The meeting tomorrow is what?
7:30 in the morning,
Wallace.
bright and early.
I don't have to go see the girls tomorrow. I don't get to go see the girls. They're going to a horse show.
I have 2 other quick things. I know there several months ago there was talk about bringing on an officer that would help with code enforcement. Is that still?
Yes, he is the second one that just began his field training.
Okay.
So he was the one that we actually already has access to the code enforcement system where he can key in cases and do follow-ups in the evening when James is not here. So he is the one. He just began his field training this past Wednesday.
Okay.
So it'll be about a 3-month process before he's ready to actually work by himself. But we're going to leave him with access to the code system, and he's going to be kind of our go-to person to follow up on code-related issues in the evenings. And that way, if we have problems getting a hold of citizens, he'll be one that can make contact, after 5 o'clock. So he is going to be assigned to night shift, so he'll be here, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So he'll be a good one to kind of keep the eyes out. So kind of help us out too about the issues where we may not see it, where vehicles are coming in after hours and parking, and some of that stuff that's just been slipping under the radar. Due to they maybe come home at 10 o'clock at night, we don't know about it.
Okay. And one last thing, can you update us or give us a status on the shots fired incident that happened a couple of weeks ago?
The most recent one, yes. So there was, so if you look at the monthly report, there was, I believe, 11 shots fired noted on here. Obviously, a lot of those, well, not a lot of them, 10 of those were unfounded, which is good. The most recent one that we had over here behind the PD. So obviously we took the measures we could the day of. We unfortunately had to shut down the basketball court. It was just bringing problems. I will tell you that we have video of the incident, but we cannot identify the subjects in the video. So that's unfortunate for us. As far as that goes, we got no cooperation from the individuals involved, so the case is pending right now. We'll be submitting evidence to the lab. If we get some hit on the evidence as we send to the lab, then obviously we'll make the appropriate charges on that. At that point, we were kind of stalemated that night. We already knew. We had no cooperation. We had evidence, and it's going to take time to get that back from the lab, so we proceeded with the RAP program on the house that was involved. Obviously, they met the standard for that. I met with the landlord, which coincidentally, he owns multiple properties in town. Very good to work with. He gave us a list of the full properties, said if we have any issues, to contact him directly. He actually filed for eviction before our meeting. So we called him up. We sent him the letter, and I called him up. I said, we're having a meeting, and he filed for eviction before the meeting. So I believe that problem is going to at least not be in that house anymore. Hopefully not in our community. It's going to move. The problem will move elsewhere. And I think sitting down with that landlord really opened his eyes to what could happen. He owns numerous parcels. Fortunately, his other houses have been no problems. So I tend to call him a good landlord. And I think he'll be reactive to whatever we ask of him. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
One other question for you. Any progress on our dirt bike riding in Standback Forest?
Loaded question.
Because I do believe they
yes.
might have been out there this weekend again. I heard what sounded like it might have been out there again.
No progress as far as identifying who it is yet. I will tell you, we did increase park checks. Unfortunately, we haven't seen them. Quite honestly, I will tell you they were probably going to run, and we have no chase policy on motorcycles like that, so we're not going to chase them. It's just too dangerous. But if we can find out where they live, then obviously we'll take care of the necessary charges that way. I have spoke with a couple other municipalities, and I spoke with the DA's office to see what their recommendation was. So we'll be coming back to the board with a recommendation for an ordinance that will give us a little bit of grit to potentially charge civilly on the trail system. So unfortunately, like the posted sign there right now that just says no ATVs or however it's worded won't cut it. As far as charging criminally, they mentioned that we could charge criminally for trespassing on a motorized vehicle on the portion of land that's in the land trust, but not the portion of land that's owned by the town. Their better idea, and I tend to agree with them, was to enact an ordinance that gives us a civil fine. When we find the individual doing it, we will fine them civilly, and then we will ban the individual from the trail system, period. They're banned. And then the police department will keep a documentation of who's banned from the trail system. If we see them back out there a second time, then at that point we can just criminally arrest them for trespassing. So we'd arrest them, we'd tow their bike and take care of it that way. As always, we could go back and try to charge for damage to the trail system. If it was a serious enough thing to get damage to it. Quite honestly, that is hard to win in court unless there's significant damage. So we wouldn't charge for slung gravel. But if there was some sort of serious damage, then we could approach it that way. Much kind of how we do some of the legal dumping and ask for restitution as far as that goes. So.
One of the things I was wondering too, just because it is a pedestrian trail, is if there could be a charge for reckless endangerment, because they are essentially putting pedestrians in danger because it's not intended for vehicular traffic.
Right. We didn't cross that bridge with the DA's office. But they didn't really bite on anything other than handling it based upon the trespassing direction, really. And I think that would be the one that would be the easiest to win. Obviously, I think if anybody was hurt, we would definitely be able to take care of it, on some sort of a reckless direction then. But currently, I think we've got a pretty good.
We don't want it to get to that
we don't want it to get to that point. So, and kind of the intent is, I know me and the mayor spoke. The intent is, if it winds up going through in the budget this year and we're able to get a UTV, we're going to mandate that our officers patrol those trails. So we like to see our officers out on the trails more, especially during the peak season. We're going to talk between spring and late fall when people are actively using it. So that's going to be a daily task that we're going to ask our officers to do, is go out and ride those trails. So, just simply to kind of that preventive measure to keep people from out there doing anything they shouldn't be doing, because I'm sure there are probably things that are going on those trails that are equally bad as riding dirt bikes on it. So we want to try to be as preventive as we can in that. So that's kind of our target for this coming year. And then, like I said, I will be bringing back something this coming month. I'm kind of reviewing a couple of ordinances that other locations are using. Unfortunately, nobody in the county really has one for us to go by currently. So we're going to kind of reach out or generate our own. It's a fairly simple one. We'll come up with a substantial enough fine to make them not do it again, and hopefully they won't be back out on the trails.
Are the
That
gates?
also-
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to mention that also comes back to, as we're talking about budgeting, the conversation that we've had and the feedback from the public about cameras at the trailhead locations, just for things just like that to be able to identify stuff. So I just ask that we keep that in mind as we're talking about additional security measures.
Are the gates being shut part of the time?
Well, the gates are shut in. They're typically shut in the evenings and then opened up first thing in the morning. As far as the parking lot area, now obviously people access those trails from numerous locations.
Right,
so,
right.
we have had people walk in there before. They're really not circumventing the gate. They're just walking in via other accesses, and they're back on the trails before the typical hours when the gate would be open. But
yeah, I drive through the street part of that
Mhm.
on not a daily basis, but a couple of times a week sometimes. And I thought I had seen that the yellow gates were closed a couple of times early in the day.
And it may have been. Yeah, I haven't been made aware of any. We get calls every now and then by people that see that they're still shut, and it could be the officers got a call, dispatching a call that morning.
I just didn't know if it was intended to be closed off at some point.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's typically open up first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, I saw a go-kart on Whitehead this afternoon when I came up here.
I have no doubt. So we've got a couple that we're watching that's on the northern end of the town. So we have a few that we're trying to catch out there. So.
Yeah, you got a 4-wheeler down by
Yes,
us,
there's a 4-wheeler down there too. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
There's a bike trail up at the Salisbury Park that's up off of Hurley School Road. Do they have any requirements, or is there? I mean, could you take a look at any of their?
Yeah, I don't believe.
Do they have any rules?
I've talked to a few individuals. I don't. And they may have one that I have not been able to find, but I've checked with a few municipalities in the county that have trail systems, but did not have anything that was specific to it. The state law actually covers trespassing with a motorized vehicle on property. That's where the gray area gets to be, because when it's town-owned park versus like the land trust, and that was why there was a split on that. Why they thought that we could charge potentially on the land trust, but we probably could not charge on the open park area. And obviously, there's no way. I mean, we've got a big sign posted up there, but there's multiple ways to access it. So, would they have even been able to see it? It's one of those things where it's going to be hard to prove that at that point. So it probably will be something that even when we get our ordinance passed, we're probably going to need to do increased signage at every entrance and be sure that it's clearly marked. It's going to be a violation of ordinance and potentially criminal law. And that way, we've got a little bit of grit in it whenever we go to charge somebody. So, fortunately, I really don't think it's more than 1 or 2 people doing it currently. So I'm hoping once we take care of those couple of issues, it'll go back down to just being pedestrian traffic. So it has happened in the past, though. So we've even caught vehicles out there, and towed them right out. But it has happened. People get a little brazen.
All right. Other question? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Chief Lanning, Fire Department.
Mayor and Board, how are you? I think at this point I can say tonight. You have my monthly report before you, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Any questions for Chief? That was short and sweet. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Stay safe.
Be safe.
Public Works, Mr. Taylor. We'll see if you can beat Chief Lanning.
So, good evening, Mayor Moore,
Good
Mayor,
evening.
members of the board.
No
Just a couple updates from myself. Just a reminder that the mulch giveaway is on Saturday. We already have 20 loads that are requested, so we're going to be kind of slim pickings on Saturday morning of how many we'll be able to get delivered that day. We won't turn anybody away. We'll do it the following week if we have to, but we do already have 20 loads on the docket, so we will be busy. The process of adding gravel to the unpaved streets, we have completed that for this spring. We did Ann Street, Lexington, the lower end of 6th, and Maroney were the ones we got covered with the allotted funding. So it went a little further than we actually thought we could go. But that's a good start, and then we'll get the rest of them on next year. And then we'll kind of keep them on a 2-year rotation. There's something on the next page, sorry. We're still working with Kimley Horn. I had a meeting with Alexandria this morning about the paving, the spring paving. She said after discussions with her, we hope to have a working draft by Friday of the bid documents. And then at that point, we can do any changes, and then they'll actually put the document together to be able to send out for bid. So should be coming in the next week or so to get that fixed. I do want to welcome Matthew, which is our new sanitation laborer for the time being. He has a landscaping background, so he will be one that will transition right into that position once we go from there. But he seems to be enjoying what he's doing now, so it might be hard to get him away from it. We'll see. But he seems to really enjoy what he's doing, so it's good. And he's a good sized fellow. So we did have some trees this weekend from the storm. Well, I say a storm, rain event. I don't really know that there was much of a storm to it. I don't know what brought all these trees down, but I would like to thank the fire department because the first 2 that day, they actually handled and got them out of the road where I didn't, and then the third one kind of tied up everybody. So we were here on Friday evening and then Saturday morning also to get it out of Mr. Morgan's way. It's on his street.
You didn't cut it down, did you, Sam?
No, I helped with several others, but I was at church when this one dropped. So.
That one, it was
just as long as you didn't help with the ones over in East Spencer.
No.
Okay. Well, true. Very true. Very true. Good call. But we did get those all fixed yesterday. One was on Gobble Street. One was in Rowan in the woods. Actually, lightning sawed that tree in half. It cut it off about 30 feet up, completely across the top, and laid it out in the road. So that was a weird one. I've never seen one like that. And then the one on Sowers Ferry had no root structure to it whatsoever.
Yeah. The ground was just too saturated with water. Couldn't hold it.
Little breeze and it blew it over. I actually ripped the water line out of the lady's house that we didn't see that night, but it was interesting. Interesting. But we've got all that taken care of. And then the chipper, we had a little issue with it yesterday, but they caught back up today. We had an alternator issue, but they caught back up. So by the end of tomorrow, everything will be right back on schedule. And then the library. We had a plumbing issue earlier this week, which we got taken care of, no problems with it. But my painter has canceled. So I have a meeting with another painter tomorrow at lunchtime to see how quick we can get them going. I know.
That would be the third painter.
That's the third painter that we've worked with. So the gentleman just had a lot of turnover and some contracts he was already involved in, and he's not going to be able to do it. He said maybe in the fall, but I'm not waiting that long. So I do have a painter coming at 12 o'clock tomorrow. I'm going to meet with him and see what we can do as far as how quick we can get it done. And I will take any questions that you may have.
Otherwise, we might have to have another Spencer Cares Day.
That's a lot of painting. We will find someone. Someone will take the job on and get it done. But we're moving on.
There's I don't know anything about him, but there's a guy that moved onto Charles Street, bought a house there about a year ago. I guess it's a painter. I don't know if he's on your radar.
Okay.
Don't have a clue who he is, but he's on the corner of what's that street that I turned down on, Steve?
Rowan. Rowan. Charles Street.
It's the one before Rowan. It runs out to Whitehead. What is it? Forestdale, yeah. He's on the corner
of Forestdale and Charles.
Charles and Forestdale.
Okay.
I see his truck there.
Okay. I will check it out. No problem.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank your staff.
All right, Mr. Sockley, Finance.
Big John.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hopefully I've had a chance to read the financial report. It's pretty good this month. Currently in the general fund, we're up about $370,000. Revenues have came in well. One of the reasons that we are doing well is that we had budgeted money for 17th Street extension and the fire department design and renovation. The monies that we spent on that was just a fraction of what we budgeted. So we'll be able to, those are ARPA funds, and we'll be able to reuse those somewhere else, which we haven't yet discussed. And then there's also $71,000 sitting in the budget to be transferred to the park fund that I haven't yet transferred, but probably get that done. It'll be done before the end of the year. I've just been waiting to do it because at this point, no reason to move it. So, but I'll get it moved before the end of the year. There are some line items that are over budget. I have been reviewing those. Every department pretty much has enough money in another line item. They can cover their overages, but we do need to get those realigned, and I've been working through that. I hope to have that done before the end of the month.
All right, questions for Mr. Sockley?
How does the money come in from the Transportation Museum? They're at 67% now.
We get a check once a month from the state.
Okay, just wondered.
It's on the automatic thing, and we get the same amount each month. We've been getting the same amount for I don't know how many years. It has not changed in quite a while.
I just noticed they were back asking for money, and I thought, we hadn't gotten all we expected for this
Well,
year.
everything else has gone up.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, and we have Ms. McGurl here for the library report.
Good evening, members of the board and the mayor and the members of the board, I should say. It's so good to be here in person with you. You have a very detailed written report. I'm not going to go into detail on the event we had in March because we have so many things going forward I want to focus on. But just to kind of give you an overview of how we plan events, so in case some of you don't realize this, I try to have events where they're spread out. For example, Black History Month, I either have a high school field trip coming in. Next year, I'm talking to Mr. Clark about having a middle school class coming in and doing a program. And then I get an outside person that's an expert in the theme of what we're doing, like last time we had the Harlem Renaissance. So, and then this last month is considered Women's International Month or International Women's Month. But usually in March, try to get a group of writers or a panel of several writers that are local. And that's what I did this last month. I had 2 local writers here in Salisbury, and one lady was from Hudson, North Carolina. And the lady I met from Hudson, North Carolina, I met through the literary workshop I went to in Hudson, North Carolina last fall. And this next year coming up, I'm hoping to go again, and they have a very famous author named Patty Callahan Henry. I don't know if y'all are familiar with her, but she wrote a book called Surviving Savannah, and it's about the Savannah ship that sunk back in the 1800s off the coast of North Carolina. And she's written like probably 20 books, and she's very well known. So we're hoping maybe next year we can have her. But I'm always looking, like when I go to any kind of event, I'm always looking for either musicians, writers, or somebody that I can plug into our town of Spencer. And so we had a small group of women that attended this last month, but everybody that was there really enjoyed it. The ladies there sold some books. Panera Bread, I'm going to give a plug for them. They donated all the pastries that we had as our refreshments for that. And April, I didn't plan a lot, basically any big events because I knew May was coming up, and then I have the summer reading program coming up. So April, I've just invited children to come in and do crafts. Like I have a family coming tomorrow to do some Easter crafts. We gave them some candy. We gave out some little things that were donated by Silver Lining. She had some little Easter Play-Doh things. She said, you can just take these for the library. So, I get a lot of people just kind of say, hey, here's some refreshments, some little Debbie cupcakes or something they give me for the library. May 6th is our next big event. We do this every year, the first Saturday of every May. And I have these posters to hand out to everybody like I did last year. You'll notice they're on a different type of paper because we're trying to save money because the printing has gone up and the harder copies were a little more expensive. So just be careful because they're not quite as sturdy. But they have on there, the main people we have are the Burnett Sisters Band. If you look on my Facebook page, look on Spencer Public Library Facebook page, as of now we have 614 followers. So if you're not a follower, add yourself to that group. The Burnett Sisters Band, I heard them in Winston-Salem at the Apple Festival. They have won a lot of awards through the Allegheny Fiddlers Convention, whatever they call it. And you'll hear 3 or 4 of their songs. I have videos shared on there for them. Also, Jimmy Alston. Does anybody know Jimmy Alston? He lives right here in Spencer. He's part of the Railway Walk-In Gallery. He's actually an artist, and he's actually a musician. He plays jazz guitar. And so I had met him at Troyer's Market several years ago when he did jazz music there. And so I'm trying to think how I ran. Anyway, I thought of him again because I had another person that was supposed to come and something they had to cancel out on me. So I had to get a person in the last 2 months. So I talked to Jimmy Alston, went to his house. He's right here on the street, South Rowan Avenue. And he was very gracious. We talked about 2 hours, and I found all about his art and his music. So he and his wife are coming, and his wife's going to sing a few songs. He's going to play some jazz guitar. Will and Adrian Beatty, I do not know them as well. I personally have not heard them, but I have friends who have heard him, and they really highly recommend him. So he's going to be kind of a surprise to me. But he plays keyboard, and his sons are going to come and play drums. And he's kind of more of a, I guess, gospel kind of artist, is the kind of songs he plays. I think he's actually a pastor as his other vocation. But he's going to come. I did have another gentleman that writes his own music, Jamar Harris, is a local gentleman from Lexington. He was coming, and then he found out he was going to be out of town at the last minute. So Will Beatty and his wife and his sons are going to be playing. Then we have from the high school, because we want to always have, I like to have some drama from the high school if it's possible. They're doing You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown the very next weekend. So it's like free advertising for them. So she's going to, Abigail Skipstead, who's the drama director, she's bringing her students to do 2 scenes from the play. So that'll give y'all, so we're trying to incorporate, people that are local, and so we're trying to draw more people to know that we have a library. And to the point of knowing we have a library, that's another point. The irony is, yesterday, a family with 8 children came to my library, and the reason they came, I saw 3 of the boys riding their little skateboards out beside the library. And so I'm proactive. If I see kids, and I've never seen them before, I open the door of the library and say, hey, y'all want to come in? I got some treats, and I got some, crafts you can do. So the little 12-year-old boy, he said, well, I got to go ask my mama. So that's good. Yeah. So 10 minutes later, the mother and 8 kids came in with her from age 3 to 12. Actually, not all 8 because she had 6, and the other two of them weren't with her, but she has 8 children. And she lives catty corner to the library, like she can spit and see the library's right there. She said, I didn't know this library was open. So you got that. You got on that side, you got people that lived there for 2 years to know we had a library. Today I had 2 young ladies come from California, passing through, wanted to get their tax forms copied, and they were so amazed at our culture, how warm and friendly and small town and charming and everything. Because in California, people wouldn't talk to you, wouldn't, whatever. So we kind of have the extreme of people that have never been in our town from California. And they were fascinated with the history of our town, the history of the library. They were looking they looked at Mr. Clyde Miller's trophy from 1945. This is somebody all the way from California now. These girls in their 20s. So it just shows you our library is far-reaching. And if you look at your Facebook, I've got these if y'all want to look at these. Salisbury, 231 people from Salisbury like our page, but only 151 from Spencer. So we got to step it up, Spencer. Get more Spencer people liking our page. And then Charlotte, we have 11. And then from China Grove, we have 11. Rockville, we have 10 people. Concord, 9 people. Granite Quarry, 9 people. Kannapolis, 9 people. Lexington, 9 people. And East Spencer got cut off at the bottom, but they had about 10 or 11 people too. So all these little towns around us are about 10 people. So I thought it was kind of, and 35 to 44 is the age range of who our Facebook page is reaching. And 75% of those are women. So men, you gotta get on Facebook and watch. But anyway, the thing in May is gonna be free, of course. We're gonna have a hot dog vendor. We're starting right at 2 o'clock. It's over at 4:30. Tell people when you pass these out to try to be there right at 2 because the Burnett Sisters van is going to be from 2 to 2:30. They're coming all the way from Boone, and they're banjo players. The one they had planned was coming from Tennessee. I'm not sure, they might have changed their banjo players, but the original one was coming from Tennessee. But they are going to play again from 4 to 4:30. So if you can't make it for the beginning, come to towards the end, you'll get to hear them both times. So they're kind of our opening and our closing. And the drama is going to be at 3 o'clock if you know anybody who's in the high school drama thing. Also this summer we've got exciting events planned for the Pirates and Mermaids is our theme. And we've got our July 19th at 3 o'clock is our big finale. We're starting on June 6th. Every Tuesday at 3 we'll have the story hour. And July 19th, Captain Jim's Magic is coming. If you've ever been to Myrtle Beach, any of their festivals, he's very professional. He's been around a long time. He actually has a real peg leg, and he has a real interesting story about how he got his real peg leg. And he does illusions, magic, and Lady Louisa is the lady that comes with him, so you're getting 2 people for the price of 1. And he's coming to do a program between 3 and 4, and I'm hoping to get a big crowd of people because it's he's a little bit on the expensive side. But we're stretching our budget because we really want to have somebody special for the children. And I talked to someone today from the Society of Creative Anachronism, Charlotte, and he has a son who dresses like a pirate, and we might have another. He won't be as expensive, be a smaller, very smaller fee, but they would come from Charlotte and do something for the kids about the history of pirates, that kind of thing. So I think that's all I had to say. We have planned, we already have talked to people about a program in December next year, got them already confirmed, and so we're working on future events. But we try to have something for children, adults. We've tried to do things for middle school, high school, elderly. We've done senior citizens, and Compass has worked with us a lot. And anyway, do you have any ideas, any programs you'd like to do?
Thank you.
I should tell you, the gentleman that did this layout, his name is Dean Duncan, and Lost Art Publishing. He's his own business.
Thank you, ma'am.
If you ever need a poster done, he's a great guy.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for all you're doing with the library.
Thank all the people that were had short things like this.
All right, we'll move on to the town manager report. Mr. Francis.
Well, yes, thank you, Beverly, for being a part of the team and bringing your enthusiasm. The library indeed would just be just a building there with nothing going on if it weren't for your efforts. So thanks for what you do, and we appreciate your efforts. And the same goes for the rest of our team. I'm honored to work alongside a great team here and to be a part of it. And so I'm always that's front of mind for me. Is that this is a team effort, and we're doing a lot of exciting things. We're planning a lot of exciting things, and this is a fun time of year when we start to look ahead in a specific way around budget. And the main thing I want to highlight through my report tonight is to kind of go over the budget calendar that gets us between now and the end of June. As I mentioned earlier, our departmental requests have been provided, and over the next few weeks, we are going to be meeting with departments. We're targeting a recommendation to you at the May regular meeting on May 9th, and we programmed in that if needed, if we need another budget workshop opportunity, if there's anything that comes out of the recommendation that you feel we need to have some extra time, I'm recommending that, we would have a special meeting the week of May 15th if we need to workshop anything. And then we'll schedule the required public hearing for June at the pre-agenda on June 8th, and a targeted adoption date at the June regular meeting. This, of course, if needed, that June 13th date could be another budget workshop opportunity with another meeting to follow for adoption prior to June 30th. So that's kind of the roadmap. I didn't know if there was any feedback that anyone would like to offer based on what we heard earlier tonight on these, on this high level tax rate discussion, or if y'all would just like to kind of marinate on it. But if there is any feedback that you'd like for me to take as we're putting the recommendation together, I would certainly like to receive it.
Does the board have any feedback for Mr. Franzese and Mr. Softly on the proposed scenarios for tax rates relative to the property revaluation?
I'll be the sacrificial lamb. I mean, it sounds like 55 cents is where we need to start.
I would be in agreement with that.
And I know 65 and a half is probably not where we'll end up, because that, everyone gets hurt a little bit by that. But I mean, I think 55 is probably where we need to be talking.
I think the services that were outlined for additional expenses that we're anticipating, I think are necessary expenses. We've heard a lot from on the police department side, the need for additional officers for that devoted team to really address some of the issues and target some of those areas. I think that's important. And then, of course, with the ongoing debt service that we're going to have, I mean, those are services where we have to continue to amp up our service to residents, both now and future residents. I think it seems like the prudent thing to do, and I recognize that is going to hit all of us a little bit more on our tax bill. But again, it's a lot less than it could be if we were not to make the cut down to 55 cents. Other thoughts? It's not the popular thing to do, for sure.
I'd like to go back and, I think I got that same message from Mr. Bish, and I'd like to go back and read that again. And
he sent it to all of us, and I think his thing was cutting the tax rate. I think the way that I read it was concern over if we were to keep our tax rate the same.
Right.
And I think that's what we've been trying to tell folks is no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to keep it the same. We're going to have to reduce it, but still, because of the property values, how much they've gone up, there's still additional services we need to be providing, and our expenses have gone up.
Right.
And so inevitably there's going to be an increase on people's tax bill, but that increase is not going to be maybe what everybody first thought it might be when they got their revaluation notice. And that's the message that we need to make sure folks are aware of.
Yeah. Well, I've had somebody ask me today, how much kickback have we gotten about the revaluations? And I said, well, quite frankly, because we're looking at budget neutrality, rates are going to have to, likely come down a good bit in order to, so I think if people understand that.
Right.
Then,
and I think the key for us, we've got to balance the needs of the town and the needs to continue the level of service that we've been providing and even increase it in some areas. So we have expenses that we have to offset, but we're still going to adjust that tax rate down.
Yeah.
And I think the county's under a similar, Jay, you may have better knowledge, but under a similar approach, they're going to be lowering their tax rate, but not down to to what would amount to be essentially revenue neutral, because they also have expenses that have gone up. But the 65.5 cent, I think across the board, everybody's going to see that come down.
They haven't said anything.
Yeah.
Specific.
I think Greg has publicly said
They're
that,
looking at all options.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the board, allowing us to kind of be out here with our discussion and start the conversation.
Yeah.
That's very helpful feedback as we're going to proceed over the next few weeks. And if that's a reasonable direction that this board feels some consensus around as a starting point, then that gives us a good direction.
I know unless you're selling your home, it hurts everybody that our property values have gone up. But in reality, that's a good thing for Spencer. It really is. I mean, it's good. It would be bad if they were going down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Any questions that anybody has in general? Okay.
Do we have any update about the trailhead?
In terms of the construction project?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Joe's here, but
Joe.
we are. It sounds like you're being invited up, Joe.
Joe, come on up.
Come on up. But the project is generally on track as we thought.
Has anybody been out there in the last week or so?
I've driven by there.
Yeah, I mean, there's stonework happening.
Right, yeah. I've driven by there.
You want to give us an update, Mr. Morris?
Sure. I was there today.
Ah.
We did run into a bit of an issue last week with the soil condition for the retaining wall, which is on the back side of the trail next to the lower to the ground tank, the big fuel tank or whatever that was, connecting to the bridge. But it's a modular retaining wall that is, essentially stacked together. It's not a mortar built wall. And so it's critical that the foundation and the soil that is behind it is suitable to prevent the wall from falling over. There's not any load on it. It's not like it's supporting a building or a roadway or anything like that. However, when they dug down a little bit to get to the bottom of the wall, it was clear to the construction company that the soil was not suitable for supporting the wall, because it was essentially just soil that was thrown over beside the bridge. It was a sort of a landscape amendment. In any event, we went through a process with our designer and a geotechnical engineer to assess what needed to be done. And what they essentially have done is they've dug down 2 feet below where the wall, the bottom of the wall will be. They filled it with large rock, and then there will be an aggregate placed in that stone and soil on top. And then they'll begin constructing the wall. So that everything, all the materials on site, and they were working on it today. As the mayor mentioned, there is some stone veneer going on the seat walls, the low walls on either side of the concourse. I anticipate if we continue to have good weather that we'll begin to see an acceleration of progress. There are things that are lined up. The paving will happen quickly. The installation of the brick pavers will happen quickly. The landscaping will happen quickly. So there will be a lot that comes together in a short period of time. Our designer told us today, Richard Callahan with Vanish told me today that he believes about 80% of the concrete work is done, which is critical to everything else being put into it. So they're making good progress. I'm not going to go out on a limb, but it'll maybe I should.
Did they not do any geotechnical evaluation during the design phase on that wall area?
So the way that was set up, Mayor, was that there was an allotment within the construction budget for the builder, the contractor, to hire a designer for the modular wall. And then where there was sort of a little bit of a disagreement was between the engineer that we hired to protect us from liability and the designer of the wall. And so that there was some expense in resolving that. And the short answer was we had a couple of parties that were, I wouldn't describe it as a dispute, but there was not agreement about the way to proceed. And so the thing that needed to happen to allow the project to go forward was for the town to step in and agree to some additional analysis to make it happen. And so
I just know typically that's on the front end of design.
I learned an awful lot about retaining walls over the last few weeks.
I'm sorry.
Hopefully, it won't be an impediment to proceeding with the project.
Well, it sounds like they were able to quickly resolve it.
And the important point I should make is that we did allow for a healthy contingency to address issues that came along, and so we're fine.
Yeah.
It would be great to say, well, we didn't spend all the money. That's our goal, but that's why we do contingencies to address those sorts of things that pop up as they do.
And I was asked today about the width of the greenway sidewalks coming from the river part into Spencer. So, yeah, I said I haven't seen any design, so I can't tell you how wide.
So for the trailhead, it's a 10-foot wide multi-purpose trail, which allows pedestrians and bicycles to pass one another. Now, when we get further into the trail system between the trailhead and downtown, there could be variation of that based on the available right-of-way.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Morris.
You're welcome.
Mr. Franzese, anything additional on your end?
No, sir.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to requests and comments by the mayor and board. We'll start with Mr. Miller.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. Spencer Community Gardens and the appreciation dinner, or excuse me, they're having a Kentucky Derby party and special fundraiser Sunday, April the 30th at Pinocchio's, 2 to 5. It's $25. It's all the, I wouldn't say all the beer and wine you can drink, but will be beer and wine in Durham, so it'll be served at that time. And there will be also a contest on the fanciest hat contest. So it should be a very interesting afternoon. So again, this is supporting our community.
Are you participating in the hat competition?
I don't know. I got so much hair on my head. I don't know if I want to do that or not.
I'm with you too.
Yeah. I could loan you a hat, Steve.
I don't think so.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Morgan.
To go back to what I said when Chief Fowle made his presentation, I don't want to see North Rowan schools get stuck with Salisbury's problems. My first question, and I hope that you will ask this at the meeting in the morning, is how long do they think this will go on? 2 years, 3 years before construction's over and done with. My gut tells me that this is going to be a problem. And as he said, we need to have resource officers in place, and we need to figure out, since we're getting their students, then I think that Salisbury should help us in providing some of the funding for those resource officers as well. I'll just leave it at that. I'd like to say more, but I might get in trouble.
Thanks, Mr. Miller. I think, or Mr. Morgan, I think that's a great question about how long the reassignment is. We've been told 2 years. But I think the other question is, the other good question we need to make sure to ask is, what is the plan for sending students back? Because I have it on good authority that the plan might not send all of them back. That there may be other intentions with how they treat that school. So, that's a question we need to know up front is, they're going to reassign them, but then what's the plan for sending everybody back to their home schools? So, Mr. Howe.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I absolutely agree with and adopt your concerns and your concerns and concerns we've talked about. But I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. Different political bodies will have to fund that project, and until it happens, it might not. So I would say that in connection and conjunction with everything else that's happening in this town, what a unique opportunity to promote and build upon our schools. If there were a door where we got in line about grievances about how the North End schools have been treated, I would gladly show up at that door and bring some folks with me. But what an opportunity. And I think the message the last couple of years, at least since I've been here,
When God gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah, and make it real sweet.
That's not going to happen.
So, well, and it might not, but on the other hand, it might. And so I would say let's take an opportunity that maybe is we're all dealing with once in a generation, once in a lifetime opportunities. Maybe that's an opportunity to really make some positive impact with our students and our communities in a way that let's be honest, there's a sense from, or has been a sense when I was in school and taught there, that this was a place you didn't want to come. Having been a student and teacher there, that was a bunch of garbage, but it's out there, right? So maybe we have an opportunity to help change that, and we as a community. And so I would say that's a unique opportunity that we don't always get. And I'll leave it at that.
I think you could expand farther because you have some ideas about how we can put our money where our mouth is. And I think at some point you're going to have that conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think it's worth putting that out there right now.
I will have to defer to our town attorney on the legalities of this, but since we're talking about tax rates, towns can allocate tax dollars for schools within their municipal limits. That's something that we can talk about. I don't know all the parameters of it because I don't deal with that every day, but that's something maybe we should talk about as we have this conversation next few months about tax rates and where the money goes.
And it gives us more of a say in our local schools by stepping up and supporting them and showing that our town and our citizens are behind it when maybe other areas aren't so much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Howe. Mr. Muhammad.
Okay. I'm going to be real brief as well. As Chief Howe stated, we have to make sure that we are not being reactive and position ourselves to be proactive. So more or less, as we prepare, not only if and when the schools combine, but for any situation that may derive from today and henceforth. And also too, I wanted to state that the youth, the young men in this community they started their spring baseball season at the 8th Street Park, and they actually had a game tonight. And on every Monday and Friday, about 7:30 p.m., the guys are out there on the field, and the concession stand is open as well. They have some delicious food. So if residents, members of council, staff come out, that'd be great to support the young men doing something great on the baseball field.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. Ms. Sledge.
Just wanted to, a reminder again of the senior spring luncheon that will happen May 2nd over at Oakdale. That's something that the town helps to fund or the town funds for senior citizens in our community. So if you're 55 or older, contact either through Ms. Schultz or through your local church if you'd like to make a reservation to attend. They have an event at Christmas time and then one in the summer. Other than that, I'm just really glad to be here, to be able to make a contribution to this community and to this town and to the citizens here. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. Got some good ideas going forward.
Thank you,
And
Ms. Sledge.
hearing everyone I talk to has positive things about what's going on in Spencer.
Thank you, Ms. Sledge. I'll wrap up just by making sure our board and staff give Mayor Pro Tem our best wishes on feeling better. I know she's battling a little bit of an ankle injury, and I know she's listening tonight, so we hope she feels better very, very quickly. The only other thing I'll say is just kind of around the issues we've been talking about with school reassignment, student reassignment. Again, I think the message that we need to make sure folks hear loud and clear is we're not trying to be adversarial. We're wanting to work with our school board and school system and administration. But in order to do that, we have to be brought into the conversation, and we haven't to date. And I think that's the disappointment and the concern is that we know our communities best. Our staff and law enforcement know our community best. And when our public safety folks and Salisbury public safety folks get together and say they're concerned about this, our school system should be listening. And I hope that they do. We're trying to advocate for what's best for all students in the district, and the reality is, at least in my opinion, what's being proposed isn't what's best, and it's not necessarily the only option. It's the convenient option, and it's the only option because of timing and the fact that our school system has gotten backed into a corner because of a lack of planning on the front end. So I would ask our board to continue to be advocates for our school system and wanting to work with them, but making sure that all of our students are taken care of and that they're given the best opportunity to succeed. With that is all I have. And I do know that there is a need to go into executive session this evening for the General Statute 143-318.11, Section A6, and that's to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness of an employee. We have Mr. Franzisa's annual review this evening, which I know we've all been looking forward to. So if there's a motion to go into an executive session, we'll do that and then take a 5-minute recess. All right, it's a motion by Mr. Muhammad. Second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right, all opposed? We stand in closed session. Staff, thank you all for your time.
Thank you all.
Oh, I meant to